I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Thursday, guys. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guest tonight is Troy. He's a part of a group of military veterans called Thor, the Hope of the Revolution. Welcome, Troy. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Sabby. Thank you for having us on. Appreciate it.
So I guess I want to start off with you explaining to everyone what Thor is about and how did it actually form to begin with. As I understand, you are a veteran. My dad was a veteran. So I really like the things that I saw on your website and the issues that you guys are passionate about.
Thank you. Well, this group started back in 2012. I was asked to join it back in 2016. They had seen a website that I had done. So we changed the name from what they had before, Veterans for America, to the Thor movement. We thought it was more the hope of the revolution. It could bring more people in. So I helped build the website. I helped with some of the campaign promises. But a lot of veterans out of Washington, D.C. on the East Coast are the ones that are like pushing this and are moving it. So we're here pretty much. We are going to run a veteran candidate in every single congressional and Senate seat in the country. What makes us different from everybody else is our candidates are going to sign a contract that states that if they don't follow through on 13 of the campaign promises, then they have to pay back all the campaign donations out of their own pocket. So that's literally our veterans putting their money where their mouth is. Look, American people have to sign contracts every day, right? Like you rent a car, you rent a house, you take a bank loan, you do all that, you have to sign a contract. You're responsible for your actions. If you don't make a payment, you have to pay. Why shouldn't our politicians hold up to the same standards?
Wow. You are actually just mentioning something that I think a lot of us had frustration with about the Justice Democrats, because those candidates that ran through that organization, they actually agreed to a pledge, but there were no repercussions if they didn't actually follow that pledge. So they agreed to that pledge. They won those seats. They got into office, but then they didn't uphold those things that they agreed to uphold. But I think a lot of people would be happy to hear that if they don't follow those principles, then they got to pay that money back. That's what a lot of us have been screaming in reference to members of the squad, that like we donated a lot of money to those candidates. And in the end, they decided to just kind of stab us in the back, so to speak, and we don't get that money back. So I think people would be excited to hear what you just said.
Well, think about this. I mean, if we would have had Obama sign the contract, Roe versus Wade would have been codified. If Trump had to sign a contract like this, the wall would have been built. To us, this is the most simplest. I'm surprised no one else came up with this before us, So when our candidates are out there campaigning for our 13 campaign promise, like, for example, let's say Jill Stein signs our campaign pledge, right? Or our campaign promises. She signs the contract. She's on the ballot for 48 states. Now, she has her own agenda, and that's fine. But as long as she signs a contract for the 13 campaign promises, I think people will come out and vote for her. I mean, I heard a story that she's already on 21 states at 15% federal funding, right? Look, we would love to talk to her and get her. Like, we met with Elon Omar's campaign manager. They weren't having it. And then today I hear that AOC and Jamal Bowman are begging for money to fight off AIPAC. And we would have reached out to them, but no. So now we're going to run against them.
All right. Well, let's take a look at some of these demands. Eric, if you can share this so I can get the website up on the screen. because you have 13 issues that you are addressing here. So I'm just waiting for this. Okay, so what was really interesting is I'm going to go ahead and go through, mention all 13, and then there's the 4 I told you that I really want to dive in on. So if you guys want to see their website, it's We Are Thor, and the actual website address is wearethor.org. And I want to chime in here at the 13 issues. Our campaign promises are our word. Massive veteran benefits. $1 million for each resident for Flint, Michigan, East Palestine.
I just want to say one thing. Those are our 3 target states: Hawaii, Michigan, and Ohio for the Senate seats, just because of this. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay. Let me just go through these really quick, and then we'll massive veteran benefits, $1 million for each resident for Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio, Lahaina, Hawaii, $33,000 post pandemic check for everyone else who made $300,000 or less a year. $32,000 post pandemic check for anyone who is eligible for the last round of pandemic checks and made $300,000 or less a year. Bring back Roe v. Wade, Glass-Steagall, get rid of Citizens United, no government contracts for non-union companies, police/prisons oversight nationwide, $21 minimum wage and a flat tax, lower drug prices and Medicare for all, eliminate medical and school debt, expanding Social Security and protecting prisons, make public colleges, universities, and trade schools free for all, pardon Julian Assange and Snowden, $21 billion infrastructure bill for every state, and reparations.
It was pensions. Protecting pensions, not prisons.
Oh, sorry, and protecting pensions.
Yeah.
So I want to chime in. There's 4 of these I did want to focus on. The first one is the $21 minimum wage and a flat tax. Could you please explain how that would work? Some people get a little freaked out when they hear a flat tax, because I remember, I think Herman Cain wanted to do something like that at one point, and people were like, no, that wouldn't work. How would you see that working out in your opinion?
Well, first, the flat tax or the $21 minimum wage?
Both.
Okay, so the $21 minimum wage is kind of, we copy and pasted from Bernie's plan with that. I wish we could make it 25, because really 21 is still not a living wage, but it's better than the $15 in some states, and it's better than the federal wage, which is $7.50. Who can live off of that? That's ridiculous. Now, the flat tax, now, this is the thing, like, the establishment is going to tell you, no, it's going to raise taxes for everybody. That is not true. All right. If you did a flat tax across the board and the 1% have to pay, like, if you do a flat tax, it'll be 19 to 21% across the board. Now, excuse me, we could raise $5.7 trillion just on top of just the 1% paying their fair tax. Now, what is the tax rate? I think it's 35% for most Americans about. I think they would love to have a 19 to 21 tax rate after the flat tax. All it is propaganda from the establishment, from Wall Street, from the 1%. I mean, you can make anything sound like you want it to sound. But if they go to the government oversight and go to, I forget the other website it will prove and it will show you the 19-21%. I mean, how much do you pay in taxes, Sabby?
I couldn't even tell you. It's a lot. I live in Massachusetts, so people call it Taxachusetts. Just to give you an idea.
Here in Minnesota, I pay from 30 to 35%.
Okay.
And that's pretty high for here. I mean, we have 11% state tax, which is high. So what is the cons to a flat tax that you've heard? That it would raise taxes for everybody, the middle class? It's not true.
Yeah. Well, here's a question. The World is on Fire is asking, would a flat tax get rid of local taxes too?
Yes, in some scenarios, yes. But the compromise would be where you would let the states have their regular tax and the federal tax would be a flat tax. So it depends what the compromise would be once you get into Congress and what the deal is going to be. So to answer the question, yes and no. Depends.
Okay. And then the idea is that the 1%, that top 1% would pay their fair share, which they currently don't.
Well, Jeff Bezos paid 0 in taxes last year.
Yep.
He made $770 billion. So how is that fair?
It is such a mess. It's such a mess. Yeah, I totally understand that. I do appreciate the fact that you have $21 minimum wage and not the $15 minimum wage, just because I feel like the $15 minimum wage is so outdated at this point in time. I think we have moved past that as a society.
Oh, no, but we talked with the SBA because one of the pitfalls we're going to run into, or one of the speed bumps, is small businesses that have 100 or 50 employees or less are going to we can't afford it. I mean, that's the talking point that they always bring. So we would give them tax cuts for any company that has 100 employees or less. That would make the difference up. But $21 people need. Well, 25 they need, but 21 is what I think we can get.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I know Professor Richard Wolff says it should be like at least $35 now if we're adjusting for inflation. But
Yes.
I hear what you're saying. You think 21 is what we could actually get. This is a good question here from the Oracle. Would he be eliminating deductions and other loopholes? So you know how sometimes the 1%, they have like these offshore accounts. Would there be a method for preventing that as well?
Absolutely. We're going to get rid of them. Look, being a veteran group and having a lot of veterans within our organization, we're attacking this problem as like a war within strategy. All right. We're going for the home run. We're going for the jugular. Okay. I don't know if I can say this word. We're not pussyfooting around. Okay. we are going after them. Look, they have taken advantage of the American people over and over and over. They have fleeced America during COVID. All right. This is a war against the middle class and the underclass, against the establishment and the 1%. All right. We're not playing around here. So that's why we're willing to sign this contract. These veterans and these candidates are willing to put their money where their mouth is. How can you not ask for anything less? I mean, you get people that come out and promise everything. AOC will promise and everybody else. And then you have a candidate, a Thor candidate, says, no, this is what I'm going to give you. This is what I'm going to fight for. This is what I'm signing my name on the contract for you. How do you not love that?
Well, let's move on to one of the other points that I want to touch on as well is health care. So lower drug prices and Medicare for all. Let's dive into that a little bit. At this point, I think some of us would say we need like a nationalized healthcare system similar to what they have in the UK, although the UK is trying to move towards a privatized system at this point. But something like similar to what they have in the UK, or as someone who is a veteran, and again, like I said, my dad was a veteran. What about TRICARE for all? As I remember growing up, TRICARE was great health insurance. They paid for almost everything. What about that? And then also let's dive into, what do you mean by lowering drug prices?
Well, if we get Medicare for all, we won't have to lower drug prices. It will be part of the package. And I think why we're fighting for Medicare all is because it's really, it has name recognition. I mean, being a veteran, love TRICARE. A lot of the veterans love the TRICARE. That could be an option. If the establishment says we can't do Medicare for all, then we give them TRICARE. But we're going to shoot for Medicare for all because that is still the better option over TRICARE. So we have two options. I mean, the great thing about going at this is you shoot for the stars and you compromise a little bit. TRICARE could be the compromise. Let me ask you a question. Would you like Medicare for all or TRICARE?
It's tricky because I do know people that have Medicare, and the biggest problem that they're running into is that, you know, Medicare does pay like that 80%, but they're still responsible for that 20% co-insurance. Now, for people that are, I would say, boomers or silent generation, a lot of them, when I worked at the skilled nursing facility, a lot of them had like this supplemental health insurance from years working at Bell South, like back when Bell South was a thing, right? Or AT&T. And so they automatically had that as a part of just retiring with that company. The problem that you run into with people, particularly from my generation and the Gen Z generation, is that we tend to move around a lot in reference to jobs just to get a higher wage. And the retirement issue, it's like, we don't get a pension. Most of us, this is not a thing. So what they have opted for is to convince us to basically sign up for a 401k and have part of your paycheck go towards that 401k. Problem is, a lot of younger people they're not making enough money to actually have a 401k. So then I worry about like having that supplemental insurance. And that's my fear, is that a lot of the people that are Gen Z, by the time they're eligible to get like Medicare, or if they got Medicare for all, they don't have that supplemental insurance to cover that 20%. And so my ultimate goal would be a nationalized healthcare system so that they wouldn't have to worry about that co-insurance.
Well, okay, so it would come down to money, right? So with our 6.5% tax on Wall Street speculation over 20 years, it's going to bring in close to $64 trillion. So let's say we did Medicare, which Medicare is going to be 32 to 34 trillion. Bernie said it's going to be coming up to 27 trillion. With the money that we would save from all the other programs that are like a one-time, like reparations, or Lahaina and stuff like that, we could still save, because when you put in Medicare, part of that money that will pay for it is Medicaid and Medicare that is on the books now. So we actually would cut it in half by $17 trillion. Now, TRICARE, I'm not familiar with the numbers too much, but in the military, I think that is also part of the military budget. So I'd have to look at that. So if Medicare would save money overall, and we could put that money then into maybe that 20% where people have to do the copay or have to pay, we can make it up for them. Because I don't think people should be in debt because of medical expenses. It's ridiculous. So yeah, there's an option that we could work. Absolutely.
Right. And I have noticed, I've read a couple of articles recently that are saying that more older people now that have retired are having to try to go back to work or pick up some type of part-time job just to pay for medical expenses. So that's another thing that people run into. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I mean, look, we're going to run into roadblocks, especially when it comes to Medicare for all, because everybody has promised it and everybody falls short. Now, this is the first time I've heard when I talked to you and Roger before about TRICARE. TRICARE could be an option if Medicare can't pass. Absolutely. You know, at least it's better than the system that we have right now. Even with Obamacare, there are still, I believe, 6-7 million people that are uninsured.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a huge amount. So TRICARE could pick it up, or Medicare could pick it up, whichever one we can get passed. But here's the thing. When you know that we're going to fight for it, like, we're signing a contract. So we will put it in every bill that passes. We will get up on the floor. We will, every news cycle that we run or interview, we will bring it up.
Yeah. Oh, I lost you, Troy. Uh-oh. Interesting. Troy will come back. But for those who are just joining, Troy is a part of an organization called Thor. There he is.
Did I lose you?
Yeah, you fell out for a second. It happens sometimes.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can't.
You'll probably have to.
Can you hear me? You can hear me. I can't hear you.
Let me put it in the chat. Yeah, you'll have to go out and then come back. Sometimes StreamYard does that. Let me put it up here.
Check the private chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Leave and come back. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. He's going to have to leave and come back because sometimes with StreamYard, you guys, it does that. Like sometimes if you drop for whatever reason and you come back in, it's like I could hear him, but he couldn't hear me. So that's why I was telling him to exit and then come back. So we'll try it again. Okay. Can you hear me, Troy?
I'm sorry. I don't know what happened there.
It happens sometimes with StreamYard. If you drop, you'll have to like exit and then come back.
Okay. All right. I'm old. Technology, you know. Okay, where did we leave off? I'm sorry.
Okay, so we were talking about Medicare for all, and you said that TRICARE could be the backup if we didn't get that. And that leads me into this issue here, expanding Social Security and protecting pensions. This is a big one, I think, for a lot of people. I don't even think that by the time I'm eligible, I don't even think I will get Social Security. So this is a big concern for a lot of people.
Okay, so expanding Social Security with the money. So it all goes back to that 6.5% that we can raise off of Wall Street, right? We can easily not double, 50% Social Security raise easily because we're going to have trillions of dollars left over after 20 years. We'll be able to pad Social Security. So, I mean, it's already a good program right now. It always has a surplus right now. But in the future, you don't know. So that's why that 6.5% tax is so important. We could raise it by 50% for seniors out there easily. Don't let anybody tell you we can't. We have the numbers. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to send you the numbers that I put together today so you have it, and we're going to put it on our website so people can see. Don't let anybody tell you that these numbers don't add up. They are from the government office. They are from different outside groups. And no, we have enough money. Now, with the pensions, that's a little bit more difficult. So if a company goes bankrupt, of course, they lose the pensions. But then the CEOs and the board get these golden parachutes. We're going to put into law that if a company goes bankrupt, they have to pay the pensions before they get any golden parachute at all. If they disobey that, or if we can't get it into law and they take their golden parachute, we'll tax them at an 80% tax rate and take that money and pay back to the people that lost their pensions. We're not messing around. So now there's two other ways you can lose your pensions. The bankruptcy is one. Another one, which I didn't know about it until I researched it, was, do you know church organizations have where they can get the pensions, but they're not legally bound to pay the pensions. If they go like bankrupt or they do whatever, they don't have to pay their employees and pensions at all. So to make church organizations adhere to that, any church that makes $1 million or more, property taxes on the money. These super churches down in Texas that are like $400-500 million, that's not the word of God. They're not preaching what Jesus said. Bullshit. No. And this prosperity church thing about, like, he literally is bragging on YouTube about, hey, I have this jet and you got to give me this jet. Now, sometimes I can't fault him because people give him the money anyways. So maybe it's the parishioner that's the problem also. But no, we are going to start taxing churches 1 million over, and no, they're not going to get away with this no more.
You're speaking my language. I've been complaining about this for years. I've thought it was ridiculous a long time ago. I still think it's ridiculous. The mega churches, especially, because they're bringing in a lot of money, and I'm sorry, like
they're not preaching the word of God, right? No.
I've talked about this before. I'm like, if you see people coming into the congregation and they're pinching money here and there so that they could put money in the collection plate, but at the same time, the preacher is driving off in a fancy car with rims and has a private jet. I've complained about this for so long.
Yes. Yeah. And so that's going to stop. Sabby, I hate to be redundant and repeat myself. Like I said, we are not playing games. We're going after everybody. No, the time for the middle class and the poor. Look, the 1% thought a reset was coming. It's just not the reset they thought. That's it.
I hear you. And then there's also this one I want to touch on as well. Pardon Julian Assange and Snowden. Let's get into that. Now, this is interesting because I want people to understand this is coming from veterans.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
how do you feel about this? Because some people or pundits in mainstream media, if they brought on someone who was a veteran to talk about Julian Assange and Snowden, it's obviously going to be favorable towards what the military industrial complex would want, right? Like they would agree most likely with the government. They wouldn't bring on someone like yourself that would agree with pardoning Julian Assange and Snowden. So I want to hear about that.
Correct. So I just have one question before I answer that. Do you believe or do you think Congress is corrupt?
Yes.
Okay, guess what? There are 93 veterans in Congress. So not every veteran is a good veteran. So Fox could bring on a veteran. That doesn't mean he's a good veteran. He's propagandizing their talking points. No, a lot of veterans understand, you know, they've been overseas, they've seen it. I've gone to 7 funerals in New Jersey on the East Coast, and I'm tired of it. Look, I'll start with Snowden. Snowden exposed what our government and the CIA and all these dark circles organizations were doing under our noses against American citizens. How can you not reward that? How can you not say, oh my God? Now, look, he ran to Russia. Snowden is more of a difficult course to transverse than Julian Assange. It is. That's just the reality of it. Julian Assange, we want to free him. We not only want to free him, we want Ecuador, United Kingdom, and the U.S. to pay $1 million for each year he's been incarcerated. So that comes out to be $18 million. And one of the first things we'll do, one of the bills we're going to put attached is freeing Assange. They should do it now. Matter of fact, I know we're going to get to reparations, correct? So I want to say this. Remember, I in the email, I said we have an out-of-a-box kind of thinking towards Trump.
Yep.
Now, I worked for Biden. Bernie. I'm a Bernie supporter. But Trump, what's the one thing that you can rely on? One, he's vain as hell, right? So if Trump decided to sign the contract, now he's not going to sign for all 13, but if you sign the 6.5% tax rate, if you sign for the Veterans Affairs, you sign for Lahaina, you signed for the post-COVID check, what we will do for you, if you do it, now you got to sign it, we'll put your face on Mount Rushmore. Well, every bill we pass. He's so vain, he actually might go for it. I mean, look, if he could get us Medicare for all, the $33,000 COVID check, and the 6.5 tax rate, who cares if his face is on Mount Rushmore? And for the fact, I would love Hillary Clinton to have a heart attack, knowing that his face is going to be on Mount Rushmore. I'd love to have the DNC have a heart attack. I would love the establishment. Now, granted, I mean, that's crazy. It's out of the box, but you never know what'll happen. Now, back to Julian Assange. We are going to fight for him from day one. Look, what he did was amazing. He should be the number one journalist in the world. And they crucify him. They speak ill of him. They keep him incarcerated. No, that's not right. Look, military people, how many military people have become whistleblowers? Because they know. And a lot of good veterans, they keep their mouths shut because they're afraid. And I get it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, that's why we're picking veterans. But I will say this. There are some civilians, like, for example, that gentleman, very articulate gentleman out in San Francisco that ran against Nancy Pelosi. We would love for him to sign our contract and run against her. Jose Vega in New York, right? Or that lady running against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Look, if you're a veteran, you're listening to this, even a civilian, if you're strong enough to say, hey, yes, sign our contract, we'll back you, we'll support you. Guys, we can only do this together, really. Okay, I'm sorry. I went off on a...
Oh, no, no worries. And then I want to get to this point here. You also have reparations. And for those who are just joining, Troy is a part of an organization called Thor. They're military veterans, and their goal is to get military veterans that are part of this organization to run for office. They have 13 issues. I think these are really good issues. Let's go ahead and talk about reparations, and let's close with that.
Okay. It's kind of like the third rail, isn't it? A little bit. So reparations, there are different estimations. We're talking 1.4 to 47 trillion, 5.7 to 14.2, or the highest estimate is 17.1 trillion. The average is 8.62. So let's go with that. All right. I know that there is some things about lineage versus non-lineage. All right. I think they both have good points, and I think it's a very good debate. There are three subjects that they actually agree on. So I think it's going to be a third rail bringing it up, but we're willing to fight for it, and we're willing to sign a contract that says we will fight for it. That's it. I mean, you could school me better on it than I could. So
I would actually say, I mean, I know I wouldn't consider myself to be an expert. I would defer to Dr. Sandy Darity because he wrote the book about, what is owed and why it's owed. And he actually explains why it should be based on lineage instead of race, because if you base it on race, it can be overturned by the 14th Amendment. That's incredibly important for people to understand. So I think that Dr. Sandy Darity, I would start there. I could put you in contact with him. He's been on the show.
Sure. Well,
he really breaks this down.
They make a good point on both sides about, like, okay, you have the American, Black Americans that will go to the American court. Then you have, like with Cuba, they have to go to Spain. With Haiti, they have to go to France. Completely understandable. But, there's a thing like like during civil rights also, right? So they should be, what's the word I'm looking for? They should be, oh my God, I'm at loss at words, Sabby. Sorry. I'm usually not. They should get what they're owed, not just from slavery, but from the civil rights, right? So they weren't allowed to go into banks or higher education, right? So what about them? What about the GI Bill? Blacks weren't allowed. I mean, there's a lot of reasons and a lot of different avenues for reparations, for sure. But what you can be sure of is we're going to sign a contract and say we're going to fight for it. So we will bring it up in Congress. We will bring it up in Senate. Every interview that our Congress and Senate do will bring it up. It will get media attention where more people will start talking about it. And that's how you get it going, right? What else can we do?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I really like the idea that you're saying that these candidates would have to sign a contract, and if they didn't do what they were supposed to do, then they would have to pay that money. Because honestly, I feel like that should be the case for every politician that runs for office. That if you don't do these things that you promised to do, I feel like you should have to pay that money. And I've been saying this for a long time. It's just, you don't get to take millions of dollars from people. And then when it comes to voting on legislation, you just vote in the other direction than what you ran on. And then all these people, especially working class people that gave their last $10 and $20, it's a shame. But like, those people will never get that money back.
No. But you know what they will get back? They'll get a $33,000 post-COVID check. Those poor people in Lahaina, in Flint, in East Palestine, and any future disaster. Because it seems that monetary is now the new justice. So that monetary has to be so high that corporations and the establishment, the 1%, do not want to do it again. Plain and simple. I want to say this, though. We do need candidates to come out, and we want to take down the squad. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Nancy Pelosi. Guys, we can't do this alone. We have to do it together. I mean, we really do. And about the contract, how come no one came up with it sooner? And other than that, I would love to see a mainstream media person ask Biden, or ask Trump if they would sign a contract like this. Everybody in the districts around the country, ask your congressman, your current congressman, hey, would you sign a contract like this? Ask the Senate, would they sign a contract? Remember the story about Sodom and Gomorrah? Like God said, is there one good person here? Here's the deal. We'll offer to one senator on each side and one congressman on each side. If you sign the contract now, we won't run against you, with the exception of Hawaii, Michigan, and Ohio. You there's no redemption for you. You screwed up. You should have took care of your people. Other than that, let's find out if there's one good senator and congressman. That's the offer we'll put out there, and we won't run against you. Let's see.
Interesting. Well, Troy, thank you so much for coming on. Eric, when you get a chance, can you put the link to the website in the chat so people can follow that
Thank you,
on their own? But thank you so much, Troy. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye. All right, guys. So that was Troy. He's a part of a group called Thor. It's a group of military veterans. Thor stands for the hope of the revolution. They are veterans. Their motto on the website says, I just want to put this up here. It says, we are Thor. We are very angry. We are not alone. And we are just getting started. We are a group of military veterans. It says who have a majority of registered Democrats and some Republicans within our group. Our organization is over 415,000 strong. It has to start somewhere with someone with some cause that ignites us to become unified. I would encourage them to run as independents or to run third party. But it was interesting. It's always good to hear a veteran say, we need to free Julian Assange. You know, it's really good when you hear someone who's coming from the military community say that, because most people are not willing to do that. All right, guys, but we still do have more stories to cover tonight. So let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and dive into that thumbnail. Oh, we got some things to discuss. Some things to discuss. Tonight, we are discussing Candace Owens versus Rabbi Barkley. I believe his name is Backley. We'll get to that. Interesting conversation. Very revealing things that I do want to highlight from that interview that I think are very telling in reference to where we are headed in the world. I'm also going to discuss RFK's VP hypocrisy. You'll see in that picture there, that's Whitney Webb actually to the left of him, RFK's in the middle, and that is Nicole Shanahan on the right. This is a story for the books, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to dive into that. We're also going to discuss Elon Musk shames. Oh God, Don Lemon. This interview, that was really hard to watch. We're going to talk about 3 points from that interview that I do want to highlight. And Troy was actually just here to discuss veterans speaking out. And again, like I said, it warms my heart to hear from veterans to champion for people like Julian Assange and Snowden. That says a lot to me. Want to go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. You're out here doing the damn thing. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories. Ultimate, Sabinators. There's also Sabsters. Don't forget about those Sabbies. And of course, members. Dun, dun, dun. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. And I want to shout out a new Sabby patron. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Temp ACC. Is it Temp AC? Temp AC or Temp ACC? Welcome and thank you so much. Appreciate you. Okay. Let's dive into this first story. We're going to jump into this discussion with Don Lemon and Elon Musk. But before we do that, there is something new that has also been announced in reference to why Don Lemon may have been fired from X after he signed this contract here. Actually, New York Post called this out. Don Lemon wanted free ride on Elon Musk rocket to host the first podcast in space. As part of a wild list of demands. I can't make this up, man. I can't do this. So it says Don Lemon, who submitted a wish list that included demands of a free Cybertruck in contract talks with X before he was unceremoniously dumped last week, also wanted SpaceX boss Elon Musk to launch him into orbit for the first ever extraterrestrial podcast. Oh my God. This is ridiculous. First podcast in space to be hosted by Don via SpaceX, the bulleted item read. The literally out of this world ask was on a document Lemon's agents at the United Talent Agency sent to Musk's social media site that also included demands for a $5 million advance on top of an $8 million base salary. Now, remember, he already received $5 million. I believe it was $5 million from CNN, right? As a part of like his settlement after he was fired from CNN, they sent him a severance package of like $5 million. So he already had that. Then he wanted $5 million advance with X on top of an $8 million base salary. Equity in the company and veto power over the site's news content policies and its roster of creators. So he also wanted some type of power here in reference to the content policies. Now, that's going to be important when we get into this interview, because that is one of the discussions that does come up during this segment. So let's go ahead and dive into the first part here. This is about the tweets and the drug use. I'm telling you, this interview was uncomfortable to watch. It was one of those moments where I was just like, awkward. Let's get into this.
Listen, I'm not asking you anything that anyone else hasn't asked you about your controversial stuff that you tweet. You post a lot of controversial stuff. Is that considered blowing off steam?
Well, I guess I do enjoy using the platform. I mean, I do call the X platform the PvP, or player versus player platform. So in video games, there's player versus like environment, where you're not playing against other people, and then there's PvP, which is like hardcore. You're actually playing against other people, and
But that's blowing off steam for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is to some degree, not always. I mean, obviously I use it for to post jokes, to post sometimes trivia, sometimes things that are of great importance.
So you do a lot of it at night, like late at night. So when you're doing this, are you sober when you do it?
Almost always.
Are you under the influence of anything?
No, I don't drink. I don't really. No.
So you.
I just didn't understand why that mattered. Don Lemon has been called out for his drunken tirades as well. Some on air, some off air. So I don't understand why that was important. It was just really weird to bring up that subject.
No drink, no smoke, no nothing. I mean, you smoke pot with Rogan.
I had one puff.
Yeah.
I think anyone who smokes pot can tell I don't know how to smoke pot.
But you've admitted that you have a ketamine prescription.
Yeah.
What's that for?
Well, I mean, it's pretty private to ask somebody about a medical prescription, But I think it's something I'd say, like, there are times when I have sort of, I don't know, like a negative chemical state in my brain, like depression, I guess, is or like depression that's not linked to any negative news, and then ketamine is helpful for getting one out of a negative frame of mind.
Well, listen,
so in fact, I generally, obviously I'm not a doctor, but I would say if someone has depression issues, they should consider talking to their doctor about ketamine instead of SSRIs.
Listen, I think that ketamine and drug therapy is increasingly becoming more in the mainstream.
Yeah.
Do you think you're doing it under a doctor's care, right?
Yeah. Literally a prescription from an actual, a real doctor, not like,
Yeah, but do you feel like you ever abuse it?
I don't think so. If you use too much ketamine, you can't really get work done. So I have a lot of work. So I'm typically putting in 16-hour days, that's normal for me, and it's rare for me to even take off a weekend day. So I don't really have like, a situation where I can be not mentally acute for an extended period of time. Like I can't really get wasted because I can't get my work done.
If I was Elon Musk, I wouldn't have even answered that question. Like, that was just ridiculous. Like, to me, it's just like, again, like, I felt like this interview that Don Lemon did was more so kind to be a gotcha moment against Elon Musk. And I have many criticisms of Elon Musk, but I didn't feel like this interview was done in a good faith way. I felt like it was just to let me try to see how much I can get out of him and make him look bad, right?
So how often do you take it?
Well, it'd be like a small amount once every other week or something like that.
But there's not on the bottle where it says take this dose this many times a week or whatever. If it's not doctors.
Now that's going too far. And see, this is where, like, if I was Elon, I probably would have stopped it right there. This goes on for so much longer, but I probably would have stopped it right there. That's going way too far. It is none of your business what that prescription says. It's none of your business how many times it says that you're supposed to take or he's supposed to take that medication. That is none of Don Lemon's business. That is going too far.
The dose. There are several weeks will go by where I don't use it.
You don't use it.
Yeah, I think it's like I said. I think what I find ketamine is if you're like literally like a chemical state in your brain that you can't just think yourself out of, then ketamine is helpful for getting you out of a depressive mind state.
You suffer from depression, or you have a depressive mind state? And I asked you as someone who has suffered from depression.
I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say that I have like a case of like extended depression. It's just once in a while I get into a negative sort of chemical mind state. Once in a while, it's not a common thing, but once in a while it does happen.
What do you?
That's none of his business. I don't understand why Elon even went this far. It's none of Don Lemon's business, whether or not someone has to deal with depression or whatever, or what kind of state of mind they get. That is really none of his business. It's important that you see this part, what happened earlier on, so you understand why I believe Elon responded the way that he did later on.
I think that comes from?
I think it's just genetic, basically.
You think it's just genetic history?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, some people are just wired to be happy all the time. Some are unfortunately wired to be sad a lot of the time. And in my case, I'm generally pretty positive and optimistic. But once in a while, I don't know what happens. There's some, like I said, I think it's just chemical tides in your brain. Once in a while, it's like a brain storm.
Yeah. Do you ever worry that this may get in the way of your government contracts and clearances, and also and Wall Street as well?
Well, from a standpoint of Wall Street, what matters is execution. Are you building value for investors? Tesla is worth about as much as the rest of the car industry combined, from nothing. So that's pretty good.
Okay. Now, I want to go to another segment there. Again, I don't feel that should have been part of the interview. Honestly, if I was Elon Musk, I would have told him that, look, you're wasting my time. I got things to do. We're going to get to this section here about the great replacement theory. This is where it starts to get a little bit more heated. So let's go ahead and jump in here.
Can we talk about the great replacement theory now? Some of the things that you post, the great replacement theory, you claim that Democrats, President Biden's immigration plan to open up the border, you said that the president is getting, and Democrats are doing it to get more votes. But undocumented immigrants cannot vote in federal elections, so how is that possible?
Right. Well, you're conflating two things. One is great replacement theory. The other is, which I don't subscribe to that. I'm simply saying that there is an incentive here. If legal immigrants, which I think have a very strong bias to, at least everything I've read, it's a very strong bias to vote Democrat. the more that come into the country, the more they're likely to vote in that direction. But it is, in my view, a simple incentive to increase voters, Democrat voters. And yeah, so the question is like how? So there's a few ways that this works. One is that when the census is done, the census is based on all people in an area, whether they are citizens or not. So if there are a concentration of people who came here illegally in a particular state or in a particular state, that state will actually then get an increased number of House seats. So the House seat apportionment is proportionate to the number of people, not the number of citizens. So the illegals overwhelmingly go to places like California and New York, and if you just look at the math, if you look at the apportionment with and without illegals, I believe California would lose. I believe the blue state, there would be a net loss of blue states of approximately 20 seats in the House.
Let me pause here for a second, because this is a piece here where I feel like Elon, he got this somewhat wrong. For example, people that are coming through, that are crossing the border, they're not going to like New York. They're going to places like Texas and Arizona. And actually, I just interviewed JT Chapman earlier this afternoon. It's recorded. You'll see it premiere tomorrow. I just interviewed him earlier this afternoon, and he lives in Texas, and he's a socialist. And he told me about some of the things that he saw when he was at the border. So just keep that in mind. It's not just coming from Republicans, right? So they're going to states like Texas and Arizona, like when they cross over the border, they end up in states like New York and Massachusetts, because governors like Ron DeSantis and Governor Abbott, they have been sending them to those states. So that piece right there is important for Elon to mention. He doesn't mention that. The way he explains it is like they're coming into New York, and they're not coming to those states. They're being sent there.
This also applies to the Electoral College. So you say, like, well, this also applies to electing the president, because the electoral votes are also done by apportionment the same way that House seats are done.
But the reason, Elon, the Electoral College is in place is to balance that, is so that doesn't happen. So what you're saying about it is the exact opposite of the reason why the Electoral College is there. Let
me go a little bit deeper with the Electoral College. The original reason why the Electoral College was created was to give the slave states more power. That's the real reason. Now, we phrase that differently today, right? Like we say, well, the states that have, smaller population, have more rural areas, they have less people. We want those states to have a say as well, not just the states where they're most populous, right? Like, obviously, so people say if we didn't have Electoral College and we just went by the popular vote, then that means that we would always have a Democrat president, because California, Massachusetts, New York, they have the cities that are the most populous, right? So that's what typically would happen. But the real reason that the Electoral College was created in the first place was to give the slave states more power.
Electoral College at this point in our history gives people who are in smaller states and red states much more of an influence over our elections than people who are in blue states, and the majority of the people in this country. That's what the Electoral College does. It actually does the exact opposite of what you're saying. It protects people who are in smaller states and protects people who are in red states.
Well,
the red states, because they tend to be smaller and less populous.
I think that statement is what you said is true, but what I said is also true, which is that if as is the case, a disproportionate number of legal immigrants go to blue states, they amplify the effect of a blue state vote. And the math, as I understand it, you can research this obviously very easily on there. It's pretty straightforward to research this. But my understanding is that there would be that the Democrats would lose approximately 20 seats in the House if illegals were not counted in the census, and that's also 20 less electoral votes for president.
Yeah, this is a good point, Teddy G. Since this is on a 10-year schedule, I think it's 10 to 15 or something like that. That's a really good point. That is something I think, again, that Elon doesn't really understand.
So the legals absolutely do affect the who controls the House and who controls the presidency. It does not affect the Senate.
Yeah. In blue states, you're talking about. I
Yes.
don't believe that your information on that is right. So listen, let's talk more about the Great Replacement, because the first time that you posted on X about this Jewish conspiracy, you ended up
I
apologizing.
didn't call it a conspiracy. I just said that there's a simple matter of incentives. You don't need a conspiracy when you have basic incentives. In my view, there's a basic incentive that is fundamental that for the Democrat Party to foster and usher in a large number of illegals. Yeah. And you don't need a conspiracy in that case, because you have a very basic incentive. You could say I'm wrong about that incentive, but that's my view. I'm not buying into some great replacement theory. I'm simply saying there appears to be a very clear incentive for Democrats to maximize the number of illegals because it helps them win an election.
I'm talking about.
Here's the problem. They're talking about this from a partisan perspective, when the reality, it's not even so much about a partisan perspective. It's about the oligarchs. It's about the billionaires. It's about the CEOs. It's about the ownership class. And see, this is the thing that bothers me when we talk about like money. We talk about money, we talk about labor. At the end of the day, it's not really about what the Republicans want and what the Democrats want. It's about what the ownership class wants, what the donor class wants, what the oligarchs want. They're the ones that really make these types of decisions. So we can point fingers in different directions. We can say, oh, Biden has open borders. We can say, oh, God, Trump has a wall. But we can also say that Biden continued to build onto that wall. We can say all these things and point fingers. But at the end of the day, the people really making the decisions in reference to where the money is going to go and the labor force in this country are the people at the tippity top.
About the Great Replacement theory is also part of a Jewish conspiracy theory. And when you did the tweet, or you responded to the tweet about that, you ended up apologizing, and which I think is, it's good that you ended up apologizing. You went to Auschwitz with Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
Right? So you said you learned your lesson. What did you learn?
I said I learned my lesson.
You said you learned your lesson when you apologized, and you said you went to Auschwitz. You saw what.
No, I was already aware of these things. And the nature of my comment that really inflamed people, what I was trying to say, and I did very quickly clarify, this is what I'm saying, is that a number of prominent Jewish philanthropists fund groups that they should really take a closer look at funding, because some of the groups they fund, I think, are anti-Semitic.
Yeah. Do you understand the connection between the two? There's a connection between, you said Democrats, the Great Replacement theory, but when it comes to the actual Great Replacement theory, originally it was started about Jewish people, as you said, flooding in the country, and then now people are using it for Democrats, saying the same thing about Democrats, flooding.
In my view, it's a simple matter of incentives.
Yeah.
I actually don't see an incentive for Jewish people to want to get legal immigration. I don't think there is such an incentive.
Yeah. The Great Replacement theory is a neo-Nazi trope. It's in the neo-Nazi manifesto. It's in the Turner Diaries. It's referenced by the Buffalo mass shooter in his manifesto, where 10 people, black people, were murdered in Buffalo. There's the actual title of the Christchurch shooters manifesto. 51 people in the Muslim mosque were murdered. 23 people murdered in El Paso by a shooter who used the same language that you use in that manifesto when you say Hispanic invasion. Is that not?
I didn't say an Hispanic invasion.
And you quoted a tweet that called it a Hispanic invasion.
If I quote something, it doesn't mean I agree with everything in it. It's just something that I think this is something worth people should consider.
Why would you quote something that you didn't believe?
Because anything I quote is going to have a whole range of statements. Doesn't mean I agree with everything in it.
Do you think if you moderated yourself more, if there was better content moderation on the platform, that you wouldn't have to answer these questions from reporters about the great replacement theory as a real?
Let me pause for a second. You know what I noticed when I was watching this interview? Is it just me, or does it look like Don Lemon aged after he got fired from CNN? Like, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's the lighting. Maybe it's the camera angle, but I was like, wait a minute. Don Lemon looked like he aged, like, in this interview. It was just kind of, I don't know. But what was also interesting is that Don Lemon basically had receipts he's been watching and paying attention to what Elon Musk has been tweeting, and not just tweeting, but retweeting. That's the weird part. Like, a lot of times people don't pay attention to retweets, right? But he's been paying attention to that. So he's been watching you, Elon.
I don't have to answer this question.
Great replacement theory as it relates to Jewish people. Do you think that?
I don't have to answer questions from reporters. Don, the only reason I'm doing this interview is because you're on the X platform and you asked for it. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I would not do this interview.
So you don't think? Do you think that you wouldn't get in trouble, or you wouldn't be criticized for these things?
I'm criticized constantly. I could care less.
You don't care?
No, I don't.
Why
care.
not?
I don't think people should care what the media thinks about them. They're terrible judges of character.
So this is him telling Don Lemon that he didn't really want to do this interview. See, now that you heard about the New York Post article, the other things that Don Lemon was asking for, the $8 million, a $5 million advance. He wants to be the first person to report from space or something, do a space podcast through Elon, things that he was requesting. I don't think it was just this interview. I think it was all those requests or demands that he made on top of this interview. So that could also be part of the problem part of the reason why Elon Musk said he didn't want to do this interview. Oh man.
Even someone who has one of the biggest social media and biggest information platforms in the world, you don't care, you don't think that you have any X.com or you have any responsibility to the truth or moderating the platform?
You're conflating the truth with the media, and I think the media is not truthful.
Well, not just the media. I mean, just the truth in general.
I care about the truth very much. That's why we have, for example, community notes on the X system, where in order for a community note to surface and provide corrective information about what somebody posts, and my posts are equally subject to this. I've been community noted many times. In order for a community note to surface, people who have historically disagreed must agree in order for a community note to surface. And all of the code for community notes is open source. All of the data is open source, so you can completely recreate it from scratch. The way to build trust is transparency.
I have noticed community notes. I think that you are right about that, and I do think community notes are helpful. I think any type of content moderation, I do think that's helpful. You recently called content moderation, though, a digital chastity belt. Do you think that you believe that X and you have some responsibility to moderate hate speech on the platform?
I think we have a responsibility to adhere to the law, and we have a responsibility to be transparent about when things are shown, why they're shown. That's why we open source our algorithm. I think once you start going beyond the law, now you're putting your thumb on the scale. And we don't want to put our thumb on the scale.
It doesn't concern you that hate speech has gone. Research shows that it's gone up on the platform since you took over. That's not concerning to you?
I believe that is false. In fact, the research that I've seen says it went down.
The study from the Institute of Strategic Dialogue found that anti-Semitic tweets doubled from June 22 to February 2023. One study reported that as many as 86% of the posts reported for hateful content remained up after being reported. Hate speech on the platform is up.
Let me pause here for a second. Why do I get the impression that Zionists actually put Don Lemon up to this interview? Because I noticed the number of times that he's mentioned anti-Semitism. There are all different types of hate speech, right? But look at what he's choosing to focus on.
So what they will typically do is they will count the number of posts, but not count the number of views. So what matters is, was that post given high visibility, or what did like one person see it? And if you look at the number of views of how many times was hate content viewed on our platform, it is down substantially.
Yeah. Well, that's not was what the study shows. And you said you like transparency. I'm going to show you this. And
Don, you can get a study that will tell you whatever you want.
But these are just a handful of extremely. You look at those anti-Semitic and racist tropes and tweets.
We're going to scoot past that part. There we go.
To radicalizing.
So Don, you love censorship, is what you're saying.
No, I don't love censorship.
Then why are you asking?
I believe in moderation, but I don't believe in
censorship. Moderation is a propaganda word for censorship.
But don't you think free speech is one thing, right? Or not,
Look, if something's illegal, we're going to take it down. If it's not illegal, then we're putting our thumb on the scale and we're being censors.
You're putting your thumb on the scale for moderating hate speech. I mean, you don't put out child pornography. That's not.
It's illegal.
Some people would say that's considered censorship. I'm just saying you.
No, I literally, Don, I literally said, if something is illegal, okay, we will obviously remove it.
Okay.
But if it is not legal, the laws in this country are put forward by the citizens. We're a democracy. If those laws are put in place by the people, we adhere to those laws.
Okay, I agree.
To the laws of others. If you go beyond the law, you're actually going beyond the will of the people.
Okay, agreed with the law. But if you are doing something that promotes hate and violence and ultimately leads to killing, you don't feel you have any responsibility not to do that? When the people who are doing it admittedly are saying
there's articles all the time that lead to violence and killing. Don't they? Shouldn't they? Like you're applying a differential standard to.
But that would never be in mainstream media. These types of images, that type of language, those things would never be. We'd never. When I was in mainstream media, we'd never promote things that would be anti-Semitic.
So again, notice how many times he's mentioning the word anti-Semitic. That's why I wonder if Zionists put him up to this interview. Let me explain something here for just a second in reference to moderating content and whether or not content can cause like some type of harm. This is the same criticism that I remember Congress members had about video games. I remember when I was growing up, when Mortal Kombat was first released, there were a number of representatives that had problems with video games like Mortal Kombat. They said that it would encourage kids to do this same type of behavior. There was a TV show at one point called Power Rangers, where there was some concern that kids were watching that show because people said kids were trying to do the stunts that Power Rangers did in real life. Where you have to be careful is that people can choose to act out whatever they want. People can choose to act out things that are positive, and people can choose to act out things that are negative. People can choose to act out things that are nonviolent, and people can choose to act out things that are violent. At the end of the day, you know what is right and what is wrong. Now, when it comes to children, that is when the parents are supposed to hold the children accountable and make sure that the children are not doing those things that are wrong or incorrect. I remember Congress members had the same criticism towards different types of music. They came after Eminem. They came after 2 Live Crew. They came after Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre. Like, I know this is taking you back for some people, but I remember all of this. So this whole idea that if you allow something to exist on the platform, then you're encouraging people to then commit some type of, violent act or whatever. No, that's actually up to the individual. We just have to be careful with how far that can go, right?
We would never promote things that would
either.
Did you not see those?
You said promote. If content is on the platform, that doesn't mean we promote it.
But that wouldn't be on a platform for mainstream media at all. No,
but you can think of that. That's because the mainstream media has 20 articles a day. We have 500 million posts today.
Okay,
500
understood.
million.
Does it bother you? How do you feel about that when you see it?
I obviously disagree with that. I think it's not good at all. It's terrible.
But you don't want to get rid of it on the platform, or at least moderate it.
The rules, what you're suggesting is censorship that goes beyond the law. And what I'm saying is, that we, I guess, have a disagreement, because I do not believe in censorship that goes beyond the law, and you do. We have a difference of opinion in that regard.
I understand that, but these are your own rules on your own platform. These go against the rules on your platform. That's why I'm asking you. If you said, listen, we allow everything, but that's not what your content rules say. And that's why I'm asking you, why are they still there? Your own content policy. That's why I'm asking you that, not because...
Which part of our content policy says that we should delete these things?
Your content policy talks about hate speech.
Yes, we don't promote hate speech.
And so you don't consider that hate speech?
I guess you're not understanding what I'm saying. There's if there's you can find, like, you can sign up right now and do 100 things that are hateful, but if nobody reads it, it doesn't matter.
Let me tell you what he's saying there. This is a revealing moment, right? If nobody reads it, it doesn't matter. Meaning, if that tweet is not getting any traction, it doesn't matter because people aren't seeing it. That's what he's letting you know. It's an issue when people are seeing it. When more people start to see the tweet, then it's... So if you have a tweet where only 2 people saw it versus a tweet where 50,000 people saw it, obviously the tweet where 50,000 people saw it, that tweet is going to be called into question if people were to, right? But that also brings up the point about suppression, which I've said before. People are still suppressed on Twitter. Palestinian voices are still suppressed on Twitter. Leftists are suppressed on Twitter. You'll look around and you'll see it's almost like Elon Musk took it in the other direction, whereas before a lot of the voices under Jack, when he was managing Twitter, a lot of the voices that were suppressed were still leftists. Still progressives were suppressed. But of course, the establishment blue Democrats were not. So like a Biden supporter or Hillary supporter, not suppressed. But the right-wing accounts, the Trump supporter accounts were suppressed. But it seems like Elon took it in the other direction. Whereas now the Trump supporters, they're elevated on Twitter. RFK supporters are elevated on Twitter. Whereas now, once again, still the leftist voices are still suppressed on Twitter unless you already had a larger following. But that is just something I've noticed. Like now I can go through my Twitter feed and I see all these like right-wing accounts that I don't even follow these people. I'm seeing people that I don't follow on my Twitter feed instead of seeing the people that I follow. So a lot of things have changed in reference to that and how the algorithm works on Twitter. But that's him letting you know that there is suppression and also that some of these accounts are shadow banned, which I've been saying for quite some time. Now, in reference to the hate speech, which he's referring to, I have noticed, and people have complained about this as well, it depends on who the hate speech is directed towards, because there's been a number of times where actually people said some things about, said something recently to JB. I think JB's in the chat. Used the N-word with the ER at the end towards JB. That account has been retweeting that same tweet to other Black content creators on Twitter the past 2 weeks. And that account has not been flagged from what I can tell. And they're still like doing this tweet everywhere. However, it seems like now people have shown actual screenshots where if they criticize Israel too heavily, all of a sudden, boom, instant suppression and community note. But a Zionist account can say some pretty racist, nasty things about Palestinians, calling them animals and dogs. I've seen it all. They can say those things, and that account does not have a community note. The tweet is not removed. So there is no consistency when it comes to who is going to be flagged. That is one thing I will say.
So you can think of X as being, it's much like the internet. It's not some tiny publication with like 20 articles a day. It's 500 million.
But everyone has the opportunity to read it, Elon.
Everyone has the opportunity to read the internet. Are you suggesting we should shut down the internet?
No, but you don't own the internet. I'm asking you about you and your responsibility and your platform. And so I see how you feel now. You don't agree. We don't agree on this.
Yes, you want censorship and I don't.
No, I don't want censorship at all.
Yes, you do.
No, I want responsibility. I think there.
You desperately want censorship.
No, if I want a censorship.
You want censorship so bad you can taste it.
No, that's not true. It's not true. I think that there's right and wrong. And I think that,
you want censorship.
and I think that when you have a platform that's as big as yours and as powerful as yours and as influential as yours, and you are a person of consequence to the world with what you do, that there is a certain responsibility that goes along with what you have on your platform and what you put out to the world. And I think that's important. You don't see that responsibility.
People can say the same thing about Don Lemon, though. I would argue, Don Lemon, when you were on CNN, you had a responsibility with the large platform that you had to tell the truth. And there were a number of times where you did not tell the truth. You told lies over and over again, but you got that paycheck, though. You continue to get paid. So what's the difference? I think you're really not the one to make that call. This interview is really something else. As I said before, if you have not had the chance to watch the whole thing and you can stomach it, go watch the entire interview. We actually have a poll question in reference to that interview, whether or not you think that that should have taken place. So let me know how you feel about that, because I do feel like, for whatever reason, it seems like to me that Don Lemon did this interview as some sort of gotcha moment. I feel like he could have been doing it at the command of other organizations or groups. You never know. It was really weird to me. Really weird. So I don't know. When I was watching it, I was just like, awkward. You know, that's just kind of how I felt. Let's take a look at that poll. All right. So you guys did submit your results for the poll. Do you agree with Don's decision to interview Elon Musk? This is interesting. 41% of you said yes. 27% said no. And 32% of you said, I'm not sure. That is an interesting poll. Interesting results. Well, let me go ahead and go to some of the comments here. Thank you for the super chat, Natalie. Event in East Palestine, Ohio this Saturday. Thank you so much for that, Natalie. If you have the link to that, maybe you can, maybe you can't put the link in the chat. Thank you for the super chat, the Snowy Blizzard. What about reparations for Native Americans? It would be horribly unfair to give reparations to African Americans unless we also give reparations to our indigenous people who experienced a systematic genocide over centuries. I agree. However, that is for the indigenous population in this country to lead that. I've actually had them on the show before. We've had them on RBN and we had this discussion, and that is their thing. And I think they know best what is best for their group. We have had that discussion. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, New York Varsity. He is the human state on the underwear of life. Thank you for this as well. Elon gave Don a chance to show he was only that way because he was on CNN. Turns out he was on CNN because he was that way. Hashtag human stain. I hear you there. Thank you for the super chat. Reinhardt, terrible interview. Thanks, Sab, for being neutral. You are welcome. JB says, this is why we need to have platforms like Twitter and X as a public utility. It should not be privately owned by people. Here you go. I agree. If you have not had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. If you are new, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. All right, guys, we are moving on to our next story. RFK Jr. is, I don't know, man, like he has people's heads spinning again in reference to another decision that he has made. Now, apparently, it appears RFK Jr. has selected someone as his running mate for vice president. You're going to see the New York Post article here, but you're also going to hear from him in reference to this choice in an interview that he just had with Chris Cuomo. So we're going to hear about that as well. And also, I think the biggest problem that people are having, or people who still support RFK Jr., is that he appears to be flip-flopping on the issues, and he's starting to look inconsistent. And that also goes into this story about Nicole Shanahan, because it was actually Whitney Webb who called it out. And, you know, Whitney is on it. Whitney is on it. She said the director of Shanahan's foundation is simultaneously part of Open Philanthropy, which financed Event 201, a pandemic simulation RFK Jr. has routinely criticized, and is mainly funded by Facebook co-founder Dustin Moskowitz. So she is referring to this announcement here from the New York Post, RFK Jr. to name wealthy attorney Nicole Shanahan as running mate in presidential run. So I'll tell you a little bit about her in just a second, right? So Whitney is, again, she's pointing out one of these inconsistencies with RFK Jr.'s beliefs versus what his campaign is supposed to be about. So Whitney Webb is a great investigative journalist. She was one of the first people, I think, that noticed this. And we'll get into who Nicole Shanahan is. Whitney Webb goes on to say, on Open Philanthropy and Event 201, Open Philanthropy was also tied to FTX scandal through SBF ties to the group via effective altruism. So she has a lot of this stuff. And it's funny because some people came after Whitney like, is there anything you like? Also, who knows if this is true, disappointing. And Whitney said the literal sources for it being true are in the tweets. So again, you guys got to understand that Whitney Webb does her research. She's done a lot of research about Jeffrey Epstein. So she's one of the people I would say you got to be, okay, she does her research. Now, Nicole Shanahan. Nicole isn't just a wealthy attorney. She was also married to Sergey Brin, who was also a co-founder of Google. So she's in that tech bro circle. Now, apparently there was also a rumor that while she was married to Sergey, she had some type of affair with Elon Musk. This is just wild. Like, I'm like, this is Days of Our Lives or something like that. Elon Musk has denied that. She has also denied that. But she is in that tech bro Silicon Valley circle. She also donated money to RFK. She's the one that was behind that Super Bowl ad that some people liked, some people did not like. So this is someone giving the money to RFK. And it comes across as though she bought her way in, that she bought her way into being his running mate. Now, you guys know he was looking at people like Aaron Rodgers and Jesse Ventura. Not sure what happened with Jesse Ventura. I would assume the Aaron Rodgers fallout or not selecting Aaron Rodgers could be because of the smear that just came out about Aaron Rodgers from CNN, which reported that he was one of those Sandy Hook conspiracy theorists. So that could be part of the reason why they decided not to go in that direction. Not sure about Jesse Ventura, but he was actually questioned about this recently in an interview with Chris Cuomo. It says here, RFK Jr., Nicole Shanahan would absolutely be a VP contender if she were broke. So Chris Cuomo, I will say in this interview, he does actually call him out on this hypocrisy, like, you say that you're for the working class and you're not into, trying to pick people who are wealthy and all this kind of stuff, which I told you guys even back then, long time ago, I said he is a part of that class. He's in that same group of people. He may not be a billionaire, but he is a part of the socialite class because he is a Kennedy. So he has the name. And then also in reference to his net worth, he's a part of that class. Listen to this.
Let's discuss this and much more with a main player in shaping our potential future, independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It's good to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me back, Chris.
So you have had a dance when it comes to saying things on Twitter or on the internet that people don't want you to say, and things being restricted or shadow banned or whatever you want. What do you think people need to understand about the state of play with where law and culture should meet on what's being called content moderation on social media?
Well, I have a case now that just won in the Court of Appeals called Biden versus Kennedy versus Biden, where I successfully sued the president for censoring, for ordering the social media sites to censor me and to deplatform me 37 hours after he took the oath of office, swearing to uphold the Constitution of the United States. President Biden had people within his White House staff contacting Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Google, the other social media sites, and pressuring them to remove my posts. And my posts, they said originally, well, it's because he's posting misinformation, but they were not able to point to a single post that I had posted that was actually factually erroneous, and they had to make up a new word called malinformation, which is information that is accurate but is nevertheless inconvenient to the government. And so you had the U.S. government doing something unprecedented, which is to pressure social media sites, media sites to censor political speech.
Yeah, we're not going to go too deep into this part because they get into the whole pandemic stuff. But basically, he's saying that the Biden administration basically were pressuring social media sites to suppress or to censor his posts. This isn't new. I mean, any of us that paid attention to the Twitter files, which I talked about a lot on the show, that was revealed that this is what they had been doing all along, right? They had been censoring people. Where this is a little bit different is that this is a presidential candidate, and you should not be allowed to censor someone who's running for office, whether you agree with their positions on these issues or not. But apparently that is happening. There's also this issue of RFK Jr. Not receiving Secret Service. So that was also an issue. So we go into that a little bit as well. But the point is, I have said this multiple times before, Joe Biden is not really addressing RFK publicly. Some of these other candidates that are running against in this race are not really addressing and going after RFK publicly. It's really weird to me, considering that he is polling as high as he is as an independent candidate. I feel like a lot of people are just looking the other way as if he's not a real contender. And I do feel like that is a mistake. I don't agree. I don't agree with a lot of it used to be like 2 of his policies. I don't agree with a lot of his policies. He's not the candidate for me. I wouldn't support RFK Jr. But that being said, I think it's a mistake for people to ignore him and pretend like he's not in this race. But you don't try to beat someone by censoring their tweets. I think this is the piece I wanted to get to here.
Of course, the social media sites are going to do what they say now. Social media sites ought to be able to police their sites, to take off kiddie porn, to take off advocates of violence or racism or whatever. But once the government gets involved and tells them what to do, then, we have a First Amendment problem, and that should never happen.
All right, 2 more quick things, Bobby, while I have you. The first one is, I don't want you to jump your own announcement, but one of the names that's being bandied about, who doesn't throw footballs for the Jets, is Nicole Shanahan. And without you saying anything, you know me better than that. You'll announce it when you want to. What do you make of the obvious criticism, which is you're supposed to be a disruptor, and to say that the way the parties are doing things, specifically the Democratic Party in your case, is that it's all about money and pressure, and you're against that?
Pause. Let's look at Nicole Shanahan, right? Who is potential RFK Jr. VP pick Nicole Shanahan? She's the founder of tech law firm and philanthropic foundation. She previously married, I told you, Google co-founder Sergey Brin. donated $4 million to pay for RFK Jr.'s Super Bowl TV commercial, and previously donated to other Democratic candidates. And that's another thing where people start to ask, how far removed from the Democratic Party is RFK Jr.? Because we've seen a couple of things happen that kind of hint to the fact that maybe he hasn't completely detached himself from the Democratic Party. And these aren't donations that she donated to the Democratic Party like 10 years ago. These were recent donations that she made. So it makes you wonder again. I feel like she bought her way in, and that's supposed to be something that RFK Jr. would actually stand against.
The criticism is that if this person is being considered, let alone the choice, she's known to have a lot of money, and is the suggestion that you are willing to pay for an election.
There it is.
Yeah, I mean, I would never choose a vice presidential candidate based upon how much money that they have. I talked to Aaron, as you pointed out. I've talked to many, many others. We liked Aaron for some of the reasons. I talked to Nicole for some of the same reasons. They're young. Our campaign is, one of the principal priorities of our campaign is bringing young people into politics and addressing the deprivation that is now and the hopelessness that is affecting this generation.
They are young, yes. They're young, rich people. They're young, but they're young, rich people. We can't pretend like they're just regular, average Joe Schmoes.
Nicole, like Aaron Rodgers, has been interested in regenerative agriculture, in press freedom, in ending the chronic disease epidemic, in addressing the terrible national debt, $34 trillion again, that's hitting these young people.
Pause here. RFK Jr.'s short list for vice president: Aaron Rodgers, which I told you I think he's out, Jesse Ventura, Tulsi Gabbard, Rand Paul, Andrew Yang, Mike Rowe, Tony Robbins, Nicole Shanahan, and Trisha Lindsay. For whatever reason, they didn't want to show her picture. But a lot of these people are like wealthy, the point is, he said he was supposed to be the opposite of that.
So, I like both of them. And I think we just had an abundance of really great candidates that we talked to. We have now chosen somebody, and we're going to announce that next Tuesday on the 26th in Oakland. Everybody's welcome. And Chris, I personally invite you to be there, and I hope you'll come.
Why? Okay, so they are going to announce it soon. And you see what he's doing here, Chris? I personally invite you to be there, and I hope you'll come. You see this?
Appreciate it. Quick follow. Would Shanahan be in the running if she was broke?
Yes, absolutely. She has.
All right.
No, she wouldn't. You know why? Because she wouldn't be in your circle. If she was broke, and she was passionate about those issues, as RFK just said, that she was, let's say she's still passionate about those issues, but she was broke, she wouldn't be in his circle. Remember, this woman was married to Google co-founder Sergey Brin. It's not like she's just someone that was working like retail, or it's not like she was a teacher, public school teacher, or anything like that.
People, yeah, absolutely.
All right. Now, I want to ask you about this photo. It's St. Patrick's Day. By the way, he wasn't Irish. But here is a lot of your family, okay, gathered around Joe Biden. And it is St. Patty's Day. They all put out messages that are all about the same thing, which is, go Joe, we support you. What does it mean when the people who know you best say Joe Biden is better than their own brother, uncle, cousin?
It means it's a repeat, because they've been saying this for the longest time. They had to put the picture up there. I can't believe they did that.
Well, first of all, I'd point out, as you know, Chris, although that looks like a big crowd of people, it is a very small percentage of my family. Last July 4th, I think there was 105 people at the Cape, and many other family members are working for my campaign. Many other family members support it. The family members who are, as you know from your family, we don't always agree on things. And I'm very, very, there are many people in my family who work for the Biden administration. President Biden is an old friend of my family. I understand that many of them disagree with me on the war in Ukraine. They disagree with me on COVID, on some of the public health issues. They disagree with me on the free speech issue. So, and we can disagree with each other in a friendly way and still love each other. They look very happy in that photograph, and it's very exhilarating. It's intoxicating being in the White House, and I'm glad I played a role, I think, in facilitating that visit to the White House and bringing them all such happiness. So I'm happy about that. And I do hope that at least a couple of them took the time to talk to President Biden and ask him to provide me Secret Service protection. So that's my hope.
That's so sad. That is so sad. It's just, to me, it's crazier, right? Because we talk about the inconsistencies. So here's another one. Like I said, he can recognize the issue with the war in Ukraine, right? So recent remarks from RFK Jr. RFK Jr. says any other nation would level Gaza if attacked like Israel on October 7th. It gets worse. Listen to this part. Independent U.S. presidential candidate RFK Jr. offers staunch support for Israel in a Reuters interview, calling it a moral nation that was justly responding to Hamas provocations with its attacks on Gaza and questioning the need for a 6-week ceasefire backed by President Joe Biden. Biden has been a vocal defender of Israel since October 7th terror attack by Hamas, but he has recently pressured it to stem the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and accelerate a 6-week ceasefire, hostage release, and aid delivery. When he is asked if he supports a temporary ceasefire in Gaza, Kennedy tells Reuters, "I don't even know what that means right now." He knows exactly what it means. He goes on to say, Kennedy says that each previous ceasefire has been used by Hamas to rearm, to rebuild, and then launch another surprise attack. So what would be different this time? How the hell are they rebuilding and Gaza is pretty much demolished, right? Goes on to say here, World War I was an immoral war. It was a war of choice. We should have never gone. Israel did not choose this war, he says, comparing it to the U.S. involvement in World War II after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Kennedy says Hamas is to blame for Gaza's destruction, for failing to embrace the two-state solution, and for firing thousands of missiles into Israeli cities like Tel Aviv. See how he's trying to blame them, right? For not accepting two-state solution. We've spoken to people on the show multiple times that they weren't offered a true two-state solution. And also, this is where more people need to push back on RFK, because I'm going to tell you right now, pay attention, folks. RFK Jr., at this point in time, not willing to call for even a temporary ceasefire, he is to the right of Joe Biden on this issue. And I wonder if that's intentional. He goes on to say here, any other nation that was adjacent to a neighboring nation that was bombing it with rockets, sending commandos over to murder its citizens, pledging itself to murder every person in that nation and annihilate it. See, he's repeating Zionist talking points. Would go and level it with aerial bombardment. But Israel is a moral nation So it didn't do that. Instead, it built an iron dome to protect itself so it would not have to go into Gaza. These are blatant lies. They have been into Gaza before October 7th. They go in to mow the lawn. This guy is a propagandist. And I'm honestly starting to wonder if he is purposely running to the right of Joe Biden on Israel. And I often wonder if RFK Jr. is going to end up backing Joe Biden. I wonder if he is going to, remember, he still has to get onto the states. Now he's gathered signatures. We're still waiting to hear if he's actually on the ballot in those states like Arizona and Georgia, but he has reached the signature gathering, right? How you run into the right of Biden on Gaza? Again, with the inconsistency, he's not consistent. This is why I continue to tell people when people say RFK is anti-war. No, he's not. This guy is not anti-war. I don't know why people keep wanting to believe this. I think you're in love with a personality. I think you've fallen in love with the personality and you're not paying attention to the policies in the way that he's been pivoting and the way that he's contradicted himself, whether it's in an interview, whether it's in an article, whether it's on Twitter. He tell you, give Israel everything that we need, give them the weapons that we need so they can go in. That's not anti-war. This guy is not anti-war. Mr. I'm supposed to be the pro-peace candidate. He's not pro-peace. Just because someone is right on the war in Ukraine doesn't mean they're right with the war in Gaza. And we've seen this from a number of people. We saw this from Tulsi Gabbard. We see it from RFK Jr. These people are not anti-war. I told people about Tulsi Gabbard over a year ago, and I got shouted at by a bunch of people who said, how dare you say Tulsi Gabbard is an anti-war? She is. I was right about Tulsi Gabbard. And it took until after October 7th and her tweeting out that tweet saying, we need to give Israel weapons and da-da-da. People are like, oh my God, I can't believe that Tulsi said this. She's been saying that. People just haven't been paying attention. The inconsistencies. And then there's inconsistencies here. Because when it comes to Israel, RFK Jr. tell you, give them everything that they need. But when it comes to, and he's in this discussion with Vicky Dillard, when it comes to her talking to him about cash reparations, which he is against, I want to make this very clear. He is against that. He said this multiple times on platforms. He got to come up with excuses. Listen to this. I was tagged in this right before I went live, and I said, oh, hells no.
So this resistance, last point that you have with reparations, this resistance that you have, if that isn't dealt with, you're going to run into problems in more ways than one.
Thank you, Vicky. And
so yeah, let me address a couple of things that you said. One is, I don't think my job is to do what people want me to do. I've never believed that. If that's the kind of leader that people want, then they should not vote for me. I'm going to do what I think is right. And everything I do, everything I've done throughout my career has shown that. Nobody liked when I was talking about vaccines. The majority of people just did not want that. But I talk about it anyway. I'm going to do what I think is right. And I would point out to you that during the civil rights movement, that the Jews in this country, and particularly the leadership of the Jews, were at the forefront of that movement and were embraced.
Let me pause. Everybody see the game? You're sitting at a table, you're talking to a room full of Black podcasters, and he gonna try to educate her about the civil rights movement. Notice who he chooses to bring up. She is talking to you about issues directly affecting Black people, and you choose to bring up another group of people because there were a couple of them that were involved as activists in the civil rights movement. I mean, it's just called reading the room. Let's continue.
By Martin Luther King were embraced by the other leaders of the movement. 3 Jewish boys, Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney, were killed in Mississippi. They died so that Black Americans could, first the Civil Rights Movement, many, many other Jews took great risks and suffered because of their sacrifices for the Civil Rights Movement.
Pause. Not as many Black people. Way more Black people suffered. Okay? Way more Black people suffered. And there were a lot of people that were part of the Civil Rights Movement, different races, but the majority of people who got their ass kicked, got dog sicked on them, or died were Black people.
In terms of the genocide, I spent 20% of my career working for American Indians who suffered an equivalent genocide of probably 100 million of them were killed. And the rest of them, the remnants of those populations, confined to reservations for 500 years. And all of this land was taken from them. And that also is an original sin of our country. And I've worked on treaty negotiations. I've worked to get them and every form of reparation that I can. I've seen the limitations of some of it. I've seen, the effects of cash reparations compared to investment in infrastructure. And I've had a lot of, I've fought for that very hard. And as I said, I believe in the moral case for reparations. What I said to Jeff is that I think politically, although the lineage-based reparations constitutionally would pass muster, I think politically getting that bill through both houses of Congress would be impossible.
Pause. So here's the problem, folks. He wants to not consider cash reparations. Again, it would be based on lineage because he thinks it would be problematic trying to get it through Congress. But the question that should be asked, RFK Jr. should be asking, and he did, and I watched this. Why is it that it wasn't problematic to get it through Congress for the Japanese Americans that were part of the internment camps? Governor Hochul in New York has just signed on to give reparations again for Jewish people. This is new. I'm not talking about a long time ago. This is new. Nobody stopped and said, when it's for these other groups, no one stops and says, oh my God, how are we going to get it through? Congress is probably not going to approve it. So what RFK should be asking is, why is it that would be the case when it comes to American descendants of slavery, but it wasn't the case when it came to Jewish people and when it came to Japanese Americans? And yes, Germany paid reparations, but there were also reparations that were paid by the United States as well. In fact, Marcel Dixon tried to explain this to Marianne Williamson when he was at her event in South Carolina. He tried to explain this to her that it happened under Barack Obama. And now you see it's happening under Governor Hochul in New York. And you see that the U.S. government gives $3.8 billion a year to the state of Israel. But when it comes to American descendants of slavery, all of a sudden it's, no, I don't want to do the cash reparations because Congress won't approve it. What you should be calling out, RFK Jr., is why they're willing to approve it for certain groups, but not for others. That's what you should be calling out. And for him to sit there in the room with other Black podcasters and to sit up here and to bring up 3 people that he mentioned, that he said were in the forefront of the civil rights movement. How dare you? How dare you try to center other groups in that damn discussion? This gets to be even more important when we get to the Candace Owens interview with Rabbi Barkley. This is something I want you guys to pay close attention to about who they choose to prioritize and who they do not prioritize. I'll let him finish this part here.
The only thing people will do is they'll say, let's study it. And that is just a formula for, kicking the can down the road and not doing anything. What I'm doing.
But nobody says, let's study it in reference to other groups. That is the problem. Do you guys understand? They gave Japanese Americans, they gave them $20,000 cash reparations. They gave to them and their descendants. Where was the, let's sit down and study this? They've been studying reparation bill. That bill has been in Congress forever. They've been studying it for decades. We all know a study is where a bill goes to die. There's no study being done. That's just a way for you to say you acknowledge that the bill was presented and you're actually just sending it to the side. You're not serious about it. So for all these people who are pushed forward in the forefront and all these people who say they're actively trying to do something for the Black community, notice as soon as you mention that word reparations, most of them take a step back and say, not willing to go that far, though. That includes the Black faces in high places. That includes the Kamala Harris who says we need to study it. The study was already done, Kamala. That includes the Barack Obama. That includes the Clyburns. That includes the Simone Sanders. That includes the Joy Reids. That includes the Candace Owens. That includes all those people who they say are representing the Black community. But the moment you try to start saying that Black people or American descendants of slavery should rightfully get what they are owed for free labor in this country, all of a sudden that is a bridge too far. But it was never a bridge too far for other groups. And for him to sit up there and try to seriously center, he tried to center Jewish people in that discussion. That pissed me off. I've said it before. This guy should be running for the president of Israel. He needs to run for prime minister of Israel. He don't need to be running for president of the United States. But he is a whole ass clown. We have to be careful and make sure that these people, I told you, some of these people that are running independent and third party are not independent or totally third party. They are just as corrupt and just as much a part of the establishment and just as much in with the big bro tech people and the big donors as people running through the two-party system. And they're all going to tell you what you want to hear just to get your vote. Fuck it. That's how I feel. Let's go to some of the comments here. Blunts and Otters says still doesn't have the cojones to debate Max Blumenthal because he's not serious. I sound like Nick now because I said not serious because he's not serious. Most of these people running are not serious. JB says the time is always right to do what is right, not when it may not be popular in Congress. EMK says they don't want Black Wall Streets again. That's how I feel too. Thank you, New York Varsity. I would listen to RFK on this if in fact his idea applied to everyone, but it does not, does it? Only Black people get short-ended on this. And that's the way it's always been. And thank you for this as well. Even descendants of slave owners got it. Man. Quick announcement, and then I'll do Rockfin and we'll go to our final story tonight. Guys, I do want to make sure I do a shout out about this. If you're not aware, my comrade JB, we do a show over at RBN. It's the JB and Sabby show. Actually, we did that earlier today. JB is actually going through some things with the landlord man. And I do want to talk about this because I've seen this happen to other people as well. It happened to a friend of mine a couple years ago. JB posted, "I can't stand landlords. Now my life is getting turned upside down and is deeply distressing. 10 years, never missed a rent payment, never late. I'm at a point where I don't know what to do right now. They want to sell it in 60 days. I've always been responsible and diligent. Housing insecurity is a horrible thing. He goes on to say, I'm dealing with this while I'm at dialysis right now. I'm also working on getting a transplant. Do I stop the process of getting a transplant because I have to find a place to live? This is why I want to change the system. It's unfair to the majority of us. And I just want to add this here. You know, the housing issue in this country is a problem. And I've seen this happen before to other people where all of a sudden the landlord or whoever owns the property decide they want to sell it. And even though you're renting from them, you basically have to leave. They gave JB 60 days to move. Now, if you are not disabled and JB is on disability, it may be a little bit easier for you to figure out how to move, pack and move and get things together and to find a place to live. But when you are on disability, and I know this because my mom is on disability, the check that you receive for disability is very small. It's not what you think it would be, and it's definitely not what it should be. So you are on a fixed income. The place where JB was staying was a place that him and his mom could afford. When you're on a fixed income and you're on disability, so you can't go to work if you're doing dialysis 3 times a week, you don't have 3 months rent to come up with to find another place to live. I don't know what it is in Florida, but in Massachusetts, you need 3 months up front. And this happened to a friend of mine a couple of years ago. The landlord did the same thing. They sold the entire building. And all of a sudden, like, all of them had to find a place to live. Like, he had 3 roommates. Just assuming that you have 3 months rent in the bank. So people have to know and understand, first of all, it's bullshit that landlords could be able to do that. Second of all, a 60-day notice, in my opinion, is not long enough time when you have to come up with 3 months rent and you still got to pay the rent for the next month and the next month in the place you're staying in. And you got to come up with the 3 months rent. So that's 5 months. And you're on disability. So there's that. Rome actually shared this. If you can help out JB, please do so. Rome shared, hey, you guys, I know it's a lot, but it's very important. My brother JB is on the verge of losing everything. His mom is ill, and I can't imagine what they're thinking right now. Please help them out with a donation and tell them Rome sent you. So you can donate to JB. His Cash App is $James Fauntleroy. Eric, you can put this in the chat when you get a chance, the actual link to this, to donate to JB, to help him out if you can, you guys, because seriously, like, I've been in this situation before. I was evicted years ago. Like, I know what it's like. So you have to know also that JB was just helping unhoused people. Because he announced this recently. He said, we met our goal. Thank you so much, everyone, for your contribution. I will stream the mutual aid action once we do it and share it on Twitter. He has the Orlando mutual aid chapter, and he was raising money for unhoused neighbors. I actually announced this a couple of days ago, right? So the goal was $1,200. They raised the money for the toiletries and the ponchos. So here's someone who, again, is out there actually helping people and helping the unhoused. And now he's dealing with this and he may be unhoused. So this is why when people say, oh, why don't you just support the Democratic Party, etc., just do things the proper way or whatever. No, we did all that. None of these politicians are stopping things like that from happening. So if you can help JB, please do so. Because it's a mess. I'm tired of this happening. I really am. Let me take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you, Eric, for putting that in the chat. Thank you for the tip, Hemp Car. Cynthia McKinney posted this. Given the extensive, well-documented SAEs and unacceptably high harm to reward ratio, we urge governments to endorse a global moratorium on the modified mRNA products until all relevant questions pertaining to causality, residual DNA, and aberrant protein production are answered. Thank you for that. Thank you for this as well. Not sure how RFK Jr. sleeps at night after being so genocidal. Recall the first sentence of the Nuremberg Code. We need RFK Jr. to debate Bill Gates. Then after he saves us from singularity, he needs to be destroyed by Norm Finkelstein in a debate. Oh, he won't talk to him. Pretty sure he won't talk to him. Okay. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash the like. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. We're moving on to our final story. This is the Candace Owens story. Oh, dear God. This rabbi that she decided to have a conversation with, Candace, Rabbi Barclay, she said he attacked her for things that she never said. But I want to show you again how the Zionist propaganda works. I want you to hear what this guy says, because I'm going to break down some of these statements, because you have to know how to push back on these talking points. Listen to this.
You appeared on Charlie Kirk's show and you referred to me as anti-Semitic. Is that correct? Okay.
Not only that, Candace, I've actually written a couple of articles, one in November and one last week, about your anti-Semitism. Yeah.
Correct. And referring to that article that you wrote last week, published on March 9th, the heading reads, "Let's be honest, Candace Owens is a Jew-hating bigot." So that's very punchy, very strong language. And I want to actually go through this article point by point so that you can defend your position and say why you wrote this.
Candace, I think before that, and as I said, I'm very optimistic that you would have a dialogue about something. I think before that, there are some real steps, which is, I have called you, and I'm not alone in this, many Jews have called you an anti-Semite. Mm-hmm. I've also talked to people who say you have a really sweet heart, just so you know. You and I have a number of mutual friends.
So let's pause here for a second. Okay. Think about what he just said. So he feels that she is anti-Semitic, but he also feels that she has a sweetheart. Hold on to that.
In the world. But I think it's important to first identify what anti-Semitism is. It is a different type of hate than any other type of hate in the world. And if you and I are speaking crossways because we have a different understanding and definition, that's not going to lead to any dialogue. That's not going to lead. Look, I said to Skylar, I'd love to walk out of here and say, you know what, I was wrong, and write an article, I apologize, and I was wrong. But the first piece is to have a mutual understanding of what is anti-Semitism. I think that would help a tremendous amount.
I actually totally agree with you on that. That is a perfect place to start. Could you provide for us a definition of anti-Semitism?
Absolutely. I really appreciate that, because I think that is the break. If we're not speaking the same language, where can we go, right? So there's a man, a blessed memory man named Lord Jonathan Sachs. He was the chief rabbi of England. He had a great line. He really defined anti-Semitism, that anti-Semitism is Jews have no right to exist collectively as Jews with the same rights as other human beings. It's kind of a weird statement. So let's just track back a bit to understand the history of anti-Semitism. 2,000 years ago.
Hold on to what he just said there in reference to the definition, right? Okay. He said collectively, no right to exist collectively as a group of people. That's important because his definition is going to change. In fact, let me make sure. One second. I just want to make sure I go straight to that part, just because this story, this little speech that he gives takes way too long. Okay, yeah. I can go ahead and go to the next one. Yeah. He gives some story about Moses. We ain't got time for all that. Let's jump right into this part here.
Because it's about Jews not having the right to exist collectively, when they live in their little communities in the Middle Ages, anti-Semitism is a hate against their religion. By the time you get to the 18th and 20th centuries, when so many Jews have assimilated, they are in culture, they are in arts, they're in science, It's no longer against them for their religion, it's against them for their race. This anti-Semitism is the oldest hate in the world, and the hate that mutates. In 1948,
pause here for a second. So what he's doing here, and this is not to say that what's bad about this, the way that Zionists are overusing that term and misusing that term and just calling anyone that disagrees with them in reference to this issue with Israel and Gaza, is that it actually takes away from people who actually are anti-Semitic, right? What I've noticed, particularly with the Zionists, is that everything in reference to Israel, it's all about this has happened to nobody else but us. It's the oldest this, it's the most hateful this, it's the most racist that, we are the only, it's like playing the ultimate victim card. Again, it sucks because there are people who really are anti-Semitic. There are people who really do hate Jewish people. But what has happened is that Zionism has taken it a step. It's taken it towards a step where it's like now, even if you just disagree, if you have disagreement with what the Israeli government is doing, now you can be called that. Right? Listen to this part.
hate, because remember, it says Lord Sachs.
Oh, I just want to pause it. You said it's a hate that mutates.
Correct.
So your belief then is that the definition of anti-Semitism can necessarily change. Is that correct?
It's not just my belief. It is the commonly accepted understanding in both the Jewish and academic worlds.
Okay.
This isn't, okay? As I said, that's why I quoted, this is a quote. It's a great thing from Lord Sachs, Jonathan Sachs. It's a great thing from Nihilecka. This is just accepted as the understanding of, a cultural anthropologist.
So I would just
pause for a second. So he is saying that the definition can change. Here is why that is incredibly dangerous. Look at what just happened a couple of months ago in Congress, where they tried to actually pass legislation that says anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. That was after the rise of protests, right? The pro-Palestinian protests across the world. Those protests are still happening. The protests haven't stopped, right? So people obviously care really passionately about this issue and have been very vocal about that. The problem with, well, yes, it mutates so the definition can change. That means that Zionists can change the definition to whatever the fuck they want it to. They can change it to include any other thing. It could be something else 2-3 years from now. How far does that go?
say off the bat, I do not accept that definitions can just mutate. That is something that I could debate that on, like the definition of a woman. I mean, and I'm saying not just about Jewish people. I think that we have to have a concrete definition to work with, because then you can just update and say, actually, I've changed that, and now this is what constitutes anti-Semitism.
But Candace, that is the horror of anti-Semitism. So what you are saying to me is that anti-Semitism is this and does not change. What I am saying to you is that the entire world and scholars about anti-Semitism recognize that it is a unique hate.
Yeah, Zionist scholars. It's not the entire world. Zionist scholars. They're the ones that made that decision. I'm willing to bet. Aye.
That if you define it as that Jews should not be able to exist collectively, okay, as a collective, they shouldn't have that right. That changes from the Middle Ages with religion, the 18th through 20th centuries about race, and then after Israel's created, it's a hatred based on the nation. And until that is understood, that it is, this isn't something that's really questioned about among academics, theologians, Jewish scholars. I'm not presenting it. This is why I thought that I'm so optimistic about a dialogue. But I think part of it is you view that the hate can't mutate. And what I'm trying to tell you is that we have 2,000 years of history that demonstrate the exact opposite.
So
You are not the only you're not the only one that has 2,000 years of history. See, this is the thing that, first of all, hating the nation, you see what he's trying to do? So he's trying to basically say, now if you despise the state of Israel, that's also, see how far they can stretch this? And he says this as though other nations have never been despised. That is obviously not true, right? Like, there are nations, Russia has been despised. It was also despised when it was the Soviet Union. Let's be real. So it's not like your state of Israel is the only one that has been despised. Again, it's the ultimate victim mentality. This is what I was talking about. We're the only people in the world. God, nothing has ever happened. Only one.
And I'm gonna just push back just gently here. For me personally, if I thought that racism could just be an ever-shifting definition based on the experience of Black people, it would be a remarkable power, and I would be able to create something like BLM, which could say that everything was racist. So I am not going to be able to agree that definition should be able to transform according to what's happening during the day. But here's what I...
Pause. First of all, the comment that she made here about BLM, there's a difference between BLM, the organization, and BLM, the grassroots. Candace Owens knows this. But again, she's not paid to differentiate between the two. She's paid to make it seem like it was all one thing. So yes, there was the BLM organization. Yes, we've talked about this before. They didn't handle money correctly. They took some of that money and became famous off of it, bought like a $5 million house. What the organization itself was saying and what the grassroots Black Lives Matter movement were saying, these are two distinct different things. A lot of the Black Lives Matter, the real Black Lives Matter activists were arrested or they disappeared. And you never heard from these people again. I'm dead serious. You can talk to Nick about this, who was at the Ferguson protest. A lot of the real hardcore Black Lives Matter protesters disappeared. They were supposedly arrested and never saw these people again. Not the Mallorys and all the people who made money off of it that were a part of the Black Lives Matter organization. So there's two different things.
I will say, if you could, just because I think it's really important for us to get to going through this article, because then you might be able to explain why you view it as anti-Semitism. If you could just give us what you are saying the current definition of anti-Semitism is today, that would be very helpful.
The current definition of anti-Semitism today has to do with what the feelings are. It has to do with anti-Zionism, number one.
Pause. Did you hear what he just said? The current definition today has to deal with what feelings are. Whose feelings? What if your feelings change? Now you see he's added in anti-Zionism. You guys see where this is going? How do you think this is going to affect your right to free speech?
Is a definition. Anti-Zionism, anti-Israel is anti-Semitism.
Okay. So you believe that Jewish people can be anti-Semitic?
Absolutely.
Okay. So when you see a gathering of Jewish people who say, you know, I'm Jewish, but I don't support Israel or Bibi Netanyahu, you say that person can be anti-Semitic. You
just did two different things and was very. You just did two different things that were totally unrelated, Candace.
Okay.
You said that Jews that do not support Israel.
Yes. And
you said Jews that do not support Bibi Netanyahu.
I'm just saying that because he's the current prime minister. So I'm saying, like, if they say I don't support.
No, this is where you're missing the point. So okay. I'm going to go under the following premise. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to go under the premise that you care about people. You and I don't know each other, but I'm going to go under that premise. I'm going to go under the premise that you have no desire to ever hurt anyone. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's the premise I'm coming into this dialogue with. You have been devastatingly hurtful. And I think that I'm going to go from that you don't understand what it means to the Jewish world. Mm-hmm. There's a great teaching that comes out of every sociologist, every person in academics is that I don't get to tell a black man if he's experiencing racism.
Mm-hmm.
He knows. I don't get to tell you if you're experiencing misogyny. You know. If I make a comment and it's misogynistic, and you say, Rabbi, you know, that was really misogynistic, my job is to say, wow, I didn't mean that. I apologize. That's not what I meant. And you do not get the right to say what is anti-Semitic or Jew hatred.
First of all, that had nothing to do with what she said when she mentioned Benjamin Netanyahu. You see what he tried to do? Let me take this all the way away from BBC. They don't like it when you mention Netanyahu because they know that Netanyahu's approval rating is significantly low in Israel. He is not well liked. So when she mentioned Netanyahu, because he is the prime minister of Israel at this point in time, notice he took issue with that. You're not supposed to mention anything negative about Israel. They don't like it when you do that.
I'm not trying to I don't think I said anything about me having the right. I just said to you, would you then view, because I did host somebody who is Jewish, Dave Smith, on my show, and I'm sure you're familiar with him. He's a comedian, he's a libertarian. He is not pro-Zionist. So I'm just asking you for clarity, because you're saying that you can't dismiss a Jewish person, but aren't you thereby dismissing Jewish people who say that I don't support Israel as a state? I'm just trying to have you answer that question.
And the answer is, I will ask you back the same question. Mm-hmm. Are there blacks who do not support blacks? Are there pick the cause or the minority who do not support or not, or actually even better? You and I both sit on the conservative side politically. We share that, right? And we face.
See, he tried to do the black thing and he realized, oh, well, I can't go there. No, you can't. You really can't go there like that with us.
The same way when it comes to that. And we both, I think, are disappointed in those who are Republicans in name only, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Does that mean?
No, not correct. That's not the same thing. I wish she would have pushed back here. There's a difference between a political party and a religion. There's a difference between a political party and a statehood. These are not the same things. So you see how he tried to throw that in there? We know people that are Republican, but they're Republican in name only. That is not the same thing as saying, well, someone may be Jewish, but Jewish in name only because they don't practice the religion. These are not the same things. I wish he would have pushed back on that. Oh my God.
Republicans?
Well, I wouldn't describe a race as a political ideology, like a political party. That's very different. So to say that you can't be a race, like you're not black if you don't support this, is different than, like, you're basically saying that a Jewish person can be anti-Semitic. So that would be like saying a black person can in fact be racist towards, or they're not black.
Look, I'm not going to comment on black community.
Mm-hmm. But you brought it up. You were the one who brought it up. I'm not going to comment on the black community. She didn't bring it up. You did.
I will say there are plenty of self-hating Jews.
Okay, so you do believe, that's all I was trying to get you to say, is that Jewish people who don't support Israel, you are saying they are anti-Semitic. I just want to understand that.
I'm saying it very clearly. They are self-hating Jews. Let's use that term very specifically. Okay. And you need to understand why they are self-hating Jews. And you need to understand, as numerous people have talked about, I've written about, Prager's talked about, Gorka's talked about, Levin's talked about, a number of people have talked about, Shapiro's talked about, and as I say, I've written about, is that a people want to assimilate. For 2,000 years, Jews have been persecuted, and so they want to assimilate, and so many have converted from Judaism not to another religion, but to leftist politics.
Ah, see that, guys? That's what it's really about. You hear what he just said? That people have left, some of them have left the Jewish religion, and they have converted to leftist politics. First of all, just because you leave the faith doesn't mean you become a leftist. You know how many people I know that have left their religion? Wasn't that a song, Losing My Religion, right? How many of you watching right now grew up Catholic, but you're no longer practicing? How many? How many of you grew up Baptist, but you're no longer Baptist? How many of you grew up? I mean, just think about this, for example. How many people do you know like that? I know plenty of people like that. So he's saying this is a problem and that they're self-hating because they no longer practice the religion. Isn't this some cult-like shit to you? This does not make any sense because they're not practicing the religion anymore. That's what he said.
That becomes their religion. And they lose their identity. That is a reality. So you need to understand, or I shouldn't say you need to, that's not fair, and I apologize. I would hope that you understand a history and an understanding that we define what anti-Semitism is. And what happened on October 7th, and I wrote an article about you in November. I don't know if you read it or not. I was told that you had, but I don't know if you did or not.
I did not.
Okay. I wish you had. And I really wish you had. Because we might
pause here. Did he get to, I want to hope I didn't miss the Shapiro part. Let me just make sure I did not miss that. Because that part is important.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's the premise I'm coming into this dialogue with. You have been devastatingly hurtful. I apologize. That's not what I meant. And you do not get the right to say what is anti-Semitic or Jew hatred.
I'm not trying to, I don't think I said anything about me having the right. I just said to you, would you then view, because I did host somebody who is Jewish, Dave Smith, on my show. And I'm sure you're familiar with him. He's a comedian, he's a libertarian. He is not pro-Zionist. So I'm just asking you for clarity, because you're saying that you can't dismiss a Jewish person, but aren't you thereby dismissing Jewish people who say that I don't support Israel as a state? I'm just trying to have you answer that question.
And the answer is, I will ask you back the same question.
Mm-hmm.
Are there blacks who do not support blacks? Are there?
Okay, we got to that part already. I'm just trying to see where I'm at with the line here. Okay. Sometimes with the Twitter thing, it's hard to move forward with the, I can't remember if I got to the Shapiro part or not. Shoot. Well, we'll find out, because I think I was right about here.
Another religion, but to leftist politics. That becomes their religion. And they lose their identity. That is a reality. So you need to understand, or I shouldn't say you need to, that's not fair, and I apologize.
That part right there. We're at 1430. We go back to 14, right about here. It's the part about identity. Because this is a revealing moment.
Well, I wouldn't describe a race as a political ideology, like a political party. That's very different. So to say that you can't be a race, like you're not black if you don't support this, is different than, like, you're basically saying that a Jewish person can be anti-Semitic. So that would be like saying a black person can in fact be racist towards, or they're not black.
Look, I'm not going to comment on black community.
Mm-hmm.
I will say there are plenty of self-hating Jews.
Okay, so you do believe, that's all I was trying to get you to say, is that Jewish people who don't support Israel, you are saying they are anti-Semitic. I just want to understand that.
I'm saying it very clearly, they are self-hating Jews. Let's use that term very specifically.
Okay.
And you need to understand why they are self-hating Jews. And you need to understand, as numerous people have talked about, I've written about, Prager's talked about, Gorka's talked about, Levin's talked about, a number of people have talked about, Shapiro's talked about, and as I say, I've written about, is that people want to assimilate. For 2,000 years, Jews have been persecuted, and so they want to assimilate. And so many have converted from Judaism, not to another religion, but to leftist politics.
Okay, that part about converting to leftist politics. Now listen to this part, guys.
That becomes their religion. And
that part right there. So he said the leftist politics becomes their religion. Listen.
They lose their identity. That is a reality.
They lose their identity. Now, this is one of the claims that Ben Shapiro has made. Now, see, let me call out the hypocrisy on the conservative side, because how many times have you heard conservatives say, not all, but conservatives say, don't talk about race, don't talk about LGBTQ, that's identity politics, just focus on class. And I've told you multiple times, class is also an identity. So I don't know where people get these talking points from, but class is also an identity. So one of the things he pointed to Ben Shapiro also says the same thing. Ben Shapiro agrees that they're losing their identity when they do that. But Ben Shapiro also complains about identity politics. Candace Owens complains about identity politics. So why is it that in reference to being Jewish and that as your identity, why is it all of a sudden that's not identity politics? Pay attention to what he's saying. He said they lose their identity. But I thought the conservative viewpoint was supposed to be against identity politics. That's what Ben Shapiro says. That's what Candace Owens says. So it seems like to me, you're only against identity politics when it's about Black people, when it's about LGBTQ people, but when it's about Jewish people, when it's about Zionism, all of a sudden it's okay to embrace identity politics. People have to start calling this shit out. I've seen this time and time again. This is the hypocrisy. There's hypocrisy on the left. There's hypocrisy on the right. But the big one for me has been the identity politics one that seems to mostly come from the right. Let's continue.
So you need to understand, or I shouldn't say you need to, that's not fair and I apologize. I would hope that you understand a history and an understanding that we define what anti-Semitism is. And what happened on October 7th, and I wrote an article about you in November. I don't know if you read it or not. I was told that you had, but I don't know if you did or not.
I did not.
Okay. I wish you had. And I really wish you had, because we might be in a very different place. You went on Tucker Carlson this is in November. And
okay, go ahead. I'm going to say I want to talk about that because you put that in this article, which was published just last week.
So I wrote a very specific article, and you can find it right now. And it was an impersonal invitation to you and for you, that despite everything else I had read or seen or heard, that my belief and my hope is that your comment of wanting to have an academic discussion about October 7th came from a place of not really realizing what October 7th was. October 7th is unique in recorded human history as the...
Oh, here we go with everything's unique. Everybody see this? Everything's unique. It only happened to Israel. Everything is unique. You guys see this running theme? Here come the tears. Oh my God, what happened on October 7th? Man, please. Get out of here with this mess, man. Get out of here with this mess. How about let's start talking about what has happened to American descendants of slavery in this country for years. We're not talking about just slavery. I'm talking about everything after that. Things that you did not have to go through. You didn't have to go through Jim Crow laws. You didn't have to deal with redlining. You didn't have to deal with the crime bill. You see, there's a difference between people actually displaying hatred towards someone and being an oppressed group and dealing with systemic racism. That's the big difference. And people need to start calling this out. Don't be afraid. Don't let people scare you. They're going to call you names anyway. They're already calling people anti-Semitic because they support the Palestinian cause. They're already doing that. But people need to start calling this out. Oh my God, woe is me. It's always, we're the worst, the unique, it only this way, it only happened to us.
Ugliest day of humanity what was done on October 7th. Taking a young woman, taking her phone to videotape her being raped on the corpse of her dead boyfriend, and then shot on it and sending that video to her parents.
That was not proven. That has been debunked so many times. These lies, the Zionist lies, I swear to God.
Beheading a man with a garden hoe, kicking a woman until her body parts fall apart is unique in terms of the intention to attack civilians. And so in November, after you made the comment on Tucker Carlson about wanting an academic discussion about how, those kind of comments that you made and the ennui that you demonstrate, I wrote an article saying that I would arrange for you, there's a film, a 47-minute film by the IDF. It is all the footage done by the Hamas terrorists of what they were doing so proudly, what they wanted to do.
Right. You mean the footage that was created and made up by the IDF? She's supposed to sit down and watch that and trust their video footage that they've already been called out for editing and stitching things together. Candace, I sincerely hope you don't fall for this. If you fall for this bullshit, if you fall for this video that he wants you to see, these statements from the IDF, if you fall for this, you are not as smart as I thought you were.
And my belief was, I don't think that you quite realize that. And I would arrange for private screening for you and your friends. Mm-hmm. And that I would arrange that and then have the discussion about how you feel about October 7th.
Okay.
Will you arrange a private screening for her and her friends about what Israel has been doing to the Palestinian people since 1948? Will you arrange a screening about that? Will you arrange a screening about how the IDF has been pulling these people out of their damn homes, beating people, imprisoning people? Will you arrange a screening about that? You see, this is the BS.
So I just really would like to get to your article because I think it's important. I want to acknowledge your pain about October 7th.
Wait, that's not an opinion. That's not an opinion.
No, I didn't say opinion. I said I want to acknowledge your pain about October 7th.
I apologize.
See how quick he was to jump in and accuse her of doing something or saying something that she didn't say?
Yeah,
I apologize.
I didn't say that. I said I want to acknowledge your pain about October 7th, and I want to get to that because you are...
Because that's all pain.
Yeah, you're mischaracterizing what I said on Tucker Carlson, but I do have the clip and we're going to be able to watch it. I definitely did not say I wanted to have an academic debate about October 7th. That's not what I said at all. But like I said, I have the clip. And I do also want... I think it's best for us to dive into what you actually wrote about me because there are several mischaracterizations, I believe, of what I said, but both of us are going to be able to watch it. So again, this is the article. And by the way, you did say in this article that you heard that I received your invitation. That is false.
I did not.
I think it's important to just maybe name the people who told you that I received your invitation.
No, I'd rather not do that, especially since you're saying that it's incorrect, and in which case I apologize.
Because he didn't hear that. He don't want to name the names because he didn't hear that. That was just another lie. That was just another Zionist lie.
No, you can apologize. I just think that a lot of the reason that things happen is because there is this sort of back channeling and discussion, and nobody told me that I got an invitation, and now you've written that I refused an invitation, and so that adds to people believing.
Because he's a liar. He wrote that because he's a liar, Candace. They've been lying all this damn time.
Candace, I'm going to ask you a question right now. I'm inviting you. Forget about the article. Because I have no issue and would love to write an article saying I was wrong. Candace Owens does not feel that way. I would love that. So I'm inviting you right now. I will set up a screening for you. Will you come?
If you set up a screening for me after we go through this, I want to also be able to estimate your character by going through some of the things that you wrote. You did write some things that I believe.
Wait. I'm asking you a yes or no question.
No. And I just said to you, I'm going to give you an answer to that. But I want to first go through your article because I want to be able to estimate.
Wait. I'm asking you a question. I will take the entire article.
I'm not saying I'm not going to answer your question. I am just saying that I would like to go through this, see how you feel.
You said you hadn't had an invitation. I'm asking you. I don't have to be there. I'll set it up for you.
Okay, sure. If you want to set it up for me to have a screening of that here without you there, that's fine. What I'm saying is that I would not, based on what you wrote about me, I wouldn't take an invitation from you anywhere. I think that's fair given what's in this article. I think that's a
You
normal
just
human
said-
response, that if somebody has written something that is utterly libelous about you, it
Wait,
mischaracterizes
you
what you
just
said. But if
just
you
said
want to
the
set it up
most beautiful
separately and you want to send it to the Daily Wire and you want us to have a private screening, I absolutely will watch the events of October 7th.
You know what? God bless you. And had I ever heard you say that, I wouldn't have written an article.
Well, I think you still would have, because you made a lot of points in here.
No, I wouldn't have.
No, he would have still wrote the article. Let's get to, I'm going to fast forward just a little bit here. Okay.
To go through these points. So
we'll go through all of them, sure.
Yes, thank you. Okay, let's just begin here. So you basically make the argument that I'm drunk on fame, and that is the reason why I have let out the truth about who I am, which makes me a Jew hater. First thing you say is that this is a woman who is such an anti-Semite and so ignorant of history that in 2018 she publicly said that Hitler was okay. Do you actually believe that I publicly said that Hitler was okay?
So from the recording that I heard, including the congressional testimony, which I think was taken out of context, and from the comments that you said, okay, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding from your comments is you were asked a question about nationalism. And you responded about nationalism using the example that nationalism was good, and that what Hitler was nationalistic in Germany, and that was okay. You have said specifically you think Hitler is a horrible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you have condemned Hitler, thank God, without question. And you also brought him up in that discussion about nationalism. Is that all accurate?
So when you just write, she publicly said Hitler was okay, that is dishonest, because what I actually was saying was answering a question, as you brought up, where we were not even talking about Jews, not talking about the Holocaust. A woman was asking about whether or not it's okay for people today to say that they're nationalist when it's often associated as a dirty word. And what I was saying was that it's wrongly associated with Hitler. I don't believe that Hitler was a nationalist, because obviously Hitler invaded Poland. He obviously had ambitions outside of... So we have the clip, so we're going to play it. So again, the question that's being asked of me is whether or not nationalism is an okay word to embrace. Let's play the clip so we can hear me and what I actually said.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I actually don't have any problems at all with the word nationalism. I think that it gets, the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Globalism is what I don't want. So when you think about, whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. You know, he was a National Socialist, but if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German, everybody to be speaking German, everybody to look a different way. That's not, to me, that's not nationalism.
I wouldn't have even said that, though. If I was her, I wouldn't have even, said that, because here we go.
So again, we're trying there to define nationalism. Does your statement, she publicly said that Hitler was okay, is that an honest statement?
Yeah, so let's talk about this for a moment. Is that okay?
Yeah.
You were asked a question about nationalism. You responded with an example of Adolf Hitler.
Yes, I said because Americans associate, the reason why they think it's a dirty word is because of Adolf Hitler.
You respond, and you have subsequently, and I've seen you subsequently, and I think you even said it at the congressional hearing, you have obviously condemned him for who he was. But you brought Hitler's name into a discussion.
Correct.
And you justified that this is how America feels or how people feel. And that's your take on it. It's not necessarily accurate. And in fact, it probably isn't from an actual sociological standpoint. But that's your opinion. Fine. But Candace, you put in the same sentence what he did if it just had stayed in Germany was okay. But more importantly, and here's a piece of the anti-Semitism. Why bring one of the most evil men of history into the discussion? You could just as easily have given any negative examples of nationalism.
So again, like I said, if it were me, I wouldn't have said that. But remember what we were saying about Alexei Navalny just a couple of weeks ago. We were calling out Alexei Navalny's nationalists. We were calling out, his nationalism. We were calling out his racism. We were calling out what he said in reference to calling Palestinian people and Muslims cockroaches. We were calling all those things out. So again, you have to understand, like I said this before, I do believe that Candace is a very smart person. And I think that Candace says certain things to get attention. I think she says it to get that soundbite because she knows it's going to send off an alarm bell. Sometimes some of the ways that you become very big is by saying things that are going to shock people, right? We've seen this happen with a number of people. She's not alone, but there were other examples that she could have used, and she did choose to use that one. And then you have him, Mr. Zionist dude here. He's going to take something like that, and even though that was years ago, he's going to hold on to it, and he added that to his collection of things to add to this article that he wrote about.
You chose to bring Hitler on, not them.
I did, and I have no. If I could go backwards in the context of trying to understand why Americans think that nationalism is a bad word, it was appropriate for me to bring off Adolf Hitler. It is totally appropriate in any capacity when you are talking about history and historical sentiments to bring up any relevant character that has created those sentiments. So I just want to yes or no. After watching that, I want to make sure we don't run out of time here. After watching that in context, do you think it is fair that you wrote, she publicly said that Hitler was okay? Hitler was okay.
Yeah. Yes, by bringing me even into the conversation, yes, I do.
Okay.
So again, this goes back to what he was saying earlier about changing the definition, right? So it's not just about, for him, it's not just about changing the definition. It's about changing other things that you say too. So were those her exact words that she said? No, it wasn't. But how will it be received? And so because she even brought up his name, he was able to use that against her. And there's other things that he's accused her of as well. But these are the kind of games that Zionists play. And this is what I've tried to explain to people before. I've watched a number of these interviews with different people. I've seen a number of these debates. Notice the talking points are the same. We can change the definition of anti-Semitism. If you are against the state of Israel, yes, you are anti-Semitic. Like, they're changing this all the time now. You can't criticize anybody. Notice if you try to criticize even Netanyahu, they want to interrupt you and pull back from that because they know that Netanyahu is not popular in Israel, right? So in order to beat them at their game, you have to know the talking points they use and how to push back on those talking points effectively. And one of the things that I seem to not see mentioned often is this. Now, I've mentioned this on the show before, but I'll continue to say it because I want people to look at the definition of what it means to be a Semite, right? Look at this. Semite, the name given in the 19th century to a member of any people who speak one of the Semitic languages, a family of languages spoken primarily in parts of Western Asia and Africa. The term, therefore, came to include Arabs, Akkadians, Canaanites, Hebrews, some Ethiopians, and Aramean tribes, although Mesopotamia. Sorry, I thought it was Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia, the western coast of the Mediterranean, and the Arabian Peninsula and the Horn of Africa have all been proposed as possible sites for the prehistoric origins of Semitic-speaking population. There remains no archaeological or scientific evidence of a common Semitic people. Let me say this one more time for the people in the back. there remains no archaeological or scientific evidence of a common Semitic people. Now, the term therefore came to include Arabs. This is the piece I feel like a lot of people leave out. And I've said this time and time again, Palestinians are Semites. Thank you, E. Rogel. Mesopotamia. Thank you. At first thought, I thought it said Mesotopia. Thank you so much. So you guys see this? What's that, Quab? Quab said purposely leave out. Mm-hmm. But even the people that have these discussions and these debates, you know, why isn't anyone saying this? It's not even just Arabs. Like I said, look at all of the different, look at this. Asia, Western Asia, and Africa. The western coast, again, of the Mediterranean, the Arabian Peninsula, and the Horn of Africa. Make sure you share that with people. Make sure you share that with people, because I really don't think a lot of people know that. And I don't think a lot of people are saying that. Everyone's trying to pronounce the word in the chat. It's really funny. No, Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia. That's funny. Anyway, think about that. Think about it. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin hemp car. Dexter King said any serious person would read the King family trial transcript from 1999 Memphis court case they won. What percentage of the U.S. know about the case and how we can break that sound barrier? ProjectUnspeakable.org. Also, Hader said 10K Holocaust survivors living in poverty in Israel, and J Post is kicking elders out of homes. See links in comments. Thank you so much for that. And I'll go to the comments over here. Thank you, New York Varsity. The reason why we are even talking about religion is because absence of this, we are left calling it what it is, a genocide by a corrupt government. Damn. Obi says Israel and their supporters can't separate the state and the religion. They think it's the same. You know, this is why I'm glad we have separation of church and state in this country. Thank you, Talkwish. Reality to who? Candace Owens audience. Thank you, Janice. Zionist is against at the faith since the Messiah is supposed to lead them back to the promised land. And no Messiah, they aren't supposed to be there. Religion has caused a lot of problems in the world. Thank you for this as well, Talkwish. Every one of us has been persecuted at some point in history, even the whites of America. BS Zionist logic. And thank you, North instead. Wow, Sabby, I didn't think anyone could be more sociopathic than our government. Clearly, I was wrong. And thank you, Eddie. In other words, Zionists appropriating 12 different cultures to justify killing real Semites. Bingo, bingo, bingo. We just have to continue to repeat that talking point, guys. We have to keep saying it so that it sinks into more people, so that they understand that Palestinians are also Semites. It's really important. Really big one. Okay, do we have the poll, Eric? Oh, we did the poll. All right, we out of here then. We're out of here then. All right, guys. Tomorrow afternoon, check out my interview with JT Chapman from Second Thought. I recorded it earlier today. It'll premiere tomorrow afternoon. Don't miss that. That was a pretty cool discussion. And then I'll be live tomorrow evening. And yeah, that's all that jazz, guys. All right. You know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.